We'll call the meeting to order.
Hell yeah.
It is 7:02 on July 18th. This is the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting. And I would ask the village clerk to please call the roll.
President Self.
Here.
Trustee Smith. Here. Trustee Pollak.
Here.
Trustee Hamilton. Here. Trustee Valerie.
Here.
Trustee Foley.
Here.
Village Manager Scalera.
Here.
Village Attorney Molina.
Here.
Also present, Village Clerk Kathy Haley. Not present this evening, Trustee Collins.
Thank you very much. And if we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Scalera.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much for coming out on this hot and steamy day. Visitors and residents, of course, are always welcome to speak at our village board meeting at any time. If you'd like to have a comment at the start of the meeting, you're welcome to do that. Or if you would like to wait until the agenda item comes up, you can do that as well. So first up is reports of village officers. Oh, public comment. Anybody? Anything to say? Nobody looked like they wanted to talk tonight, so. So with regard to the village presence report, really all I wanted to report to you is that Manager Scalera and I had a very productive meeting this past week with representatives from North Riverside, Brookfield, the Zoo, District 208, and District 96 to discuss the First Avenue improvements in terms of the intersection improvements and the possibility of eventually having a bicycle path extending north from First Avenue. And everyone is on board. We're excited about the projects moving forward. And I was just told before the meeting that IDOT is going to be here at the end of next week for a kickoff meeting where we will actually start looking at the actual plans for the intersection. So things are moving apace on that. And that's all I have. Next up is our village manager's report.
The only item that I have is with the heat today and the heat tomorrow, I ask that if you do have any elderly neighbors to please check on them, contact the village for any assistance. The township hall is open during the day and most of the evening for a cooling center. So I ask that you please do check on your elderly neighbors. Thank you.
So next up is the approval of the consent agenda. Items are duly posted. Does any trustee need anything removed to discuss? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Foley.
Second.
Second by Ms. Hamilton. Would you please call the roll?
Trustee Sutton.
Aye.
Trustee Pollak.
Aye.
Trustee Hamilton.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have no reports of departments and commissions tonight, nor ordinances and resolutions. So we'll move on now to our main topic of discussion tonight, which is the Village of Riverside Capital Improvement Plan 2023. So it's a 10-year plan. And I just want to say before we plow into this, this is one of probably the most important discussions we will have over the course of the year. If the operations of the village are the circulatory system, then the capital improvement plan is the heart, because this really goes to our infrastructure and our large ticket items. We have all of our department heads here tonight who are here to answer any questions that the trustees might have as we go through. I would suggest, given the seriousness of this discussion, that we really focus this evening just on having a discussion. Let's get our questions answered, and then I would suggest that we hold off any final decisions until our first meeting in August. And at that point, if we have any further discussion or questions in the interim 2 weeks, we can get those answered, and then we can make some decisions. So tonight will be all presentation and discussion. And I believe our finance director, Ms. Francis, is going to lead off the evening.
I am. Obviously, we've provided the village board with the 10-year capital plan. It moved last year from a 5-year plan to a 10-year plan, which we feel has been an effective planning tool for the village as a whole. The 10-year plan, in comparison to last year, has actually been reduced. We had a very aggressive capital plan for fiscal year 2013 that we're working our way through, and In comparison to last year, the plan is decreased by $750,000 approximately. Any capital that was deferred, that was listed in last year's capital plan, that unfortunately we were unable to budget during fiscal year 2013, is listed in the current capital plan. And it also has notes stating if it was deferred and why it might have been deferred. The fiscal year 2023 includes the actual, capital plan 2023 includes an additional fiscal year, obviously removing fiscal year 2013 from the plan. The street program actually represents 25% of the various capital items that are in there as a whole. Also, the vehicle replacement schedule is 33% of the estimated expenses that are within the 10-year plan. Of that 33%, the fire vehicles represent 75% of the vehicle replacement costs. 10%, just so that you are well aware, we have spoken with our contractual service, the village engineering services that we contract with, and there is actually, for the current year, there's a 10% construction inflation factor. They're anticipating 10% again next year and 5% thereafter. So we want to take a proactive stance as it relates to the construction. And as it relates to the village's unassigned fund balance, from fiscal year 2011 to 2012, the unassigned fund balance has gone up by 8.56%. Now I'm going to move into the issues to consider that are listed, and also obviously solicit discussion by the village board and potentially any questions that they may have as to the issues to consider for the capital plan. Currently, we have a fund balance policy that discusses a cash flow assignment of 25%. Over the past few fiscal years, our unassigned fund balance has continued to grow. If we are uncomfortable with a 25% cash flow assignment, and that's why we're allowing the unassigned fund balance to grow, then we should adjust our fund balance policy accordingly. If we're comfortable with that, then I would move on to the discussion of utilization of the unassigned fund balance. What do we plan on using it for, and what is its function? Additionally, whether or not if we choose to make any type of transfer over to the capital projects fund from the general fund based on the large unassigned fund balance, whether or not a percentage of that should be assigned to vehicle replacement. Back in 2008 and some years thereafter, prior to that, there used to be a line item within each department associated with vehicle replacement. Those monies were then combined and transferred over to capital projects, which then left an assignment. That has not been done since 2008. 2009, it was originally budgeted. There was a budget amendment in June of 2009 based on the downturn in the economy, and so therefore that never took place, and it was actually removed from the budget in totality for each department. And then also, finally, another item of discussion is in late 2014, the village will have bonds that are actually retiring. Those bonds were originally voter-approved referendum bonds for street resurfacing. Given that we have a very aggressive street program, it opens the opportunity as to whether or not we go to the voters for referendum debt, which would actually maintain our current debt level, so it would have no impact on tax bills as it relates to debt repayment. And if we choose to do that, then staff, I would recommend, give the direction of providing items as it relates to what is qualifying for a debt issuance, and bring that back to the board.
Jessica,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't answer earlier. You might not answer right on your hand.
Sure.
But could you, that referendum amount, that $2 million, do you know what that affects the average resident?
I do not have that readily available.
I'm sorry, I should have asked you that earlier today. I didn't think about it until just now.
No, that's
Do you
okay.
want to start with each of the policy? Excuse me, do you want to start talking to each about each of the policies?
Sure, I've gone through them, pretty much the highlights of them, so if we actually want to go through it item by item to solicit discussion, or if there are questions that certain trustees have right now, we can do that as well.
Well, I was going to ask first, our two finance trustees, Trustee Sussman and Trustee Hamilton, have met with Director Francis. Did either of you have any kind of general observations you wanted to make before we kind of dig into this? Or just
Well, I don't know how Ms. Francis feels about this, or Ellen for that matter, you, but I think my preference would be to tackle each of these and to talk about them.
Sure.
And to make sure that we're very clear on what the Finance Department and Mr. Scalera needs from us tonight, because this is preliminary work that goes into the budget. And there may actually be some items that, while we may not have to approve the final CIP tonight, there may be some policy decisions, Peter's saying yes, that we do have to make. And so I would like Mr. Scalera and Ms. Francis, as we get to that policy discussion, to be very clear. I will reiterate the questions so that they can leave with the information they need to start working on the budget.
I agree with that. I think we should augment each of these items that Jessica has outlined very briefly and make sure that we have the opportunity to go into them more deeply, to make sure that all of you understand what each one of them is, how it relates to best practice, and, what the recommendation is that she's making, and then, how both Trustee Sussman and I, what our opinions are.
Well, let me just ask you this, because it seems to me that the first question in terms of the fund balance commitment, how we're going to handle year-end surpluses, that kind of thing, that to me seems more of a standalone kind of an issue. Whereas whether we're going to make, or the amount of transfer we're going to make over, don't we kind of need to go through some of the detail of
We need to go through each one of these, and they are in a rather orderly manner.
But I mean, do we need to
They're
go
incremental.
do we need to go through some of the actual items, the actual
The CIP items?
The CIP items before
We may when we
make
get to the actual transfer, but
Right now we're
the
at
transfer
policy.
is a one-time transfer. What number 1 and number 3 are actually policy
Right.
issues.
That's what I was getting at. Should we do
So-
number 1 and 3 first, and then kind of go through the?
We could, sure.
Okay.
Or we could do I think we need to do number 1 before we
Right.
do number
Right.
2. I think number 3 is different.
And just a little background on number 1. I mean, prior to 2010, the policy of the board was at the end of, if there was a budget surplus at the end of the year, that surplus would then go into the capital improvement fund. In 2010, that policy was terminated. So the question before us tonight is whether we want to reinstitute that policy. And if you look at page 4 of Plan 2023, you can see the various from we've had roughly about a $240,000 a year surplus historically.
And actually, there are 2 parts to number 1 that I think we need to talk about.
Yes.
One part is certainly what President Sells said, and that is every year, due to the astute work of our staff, we've had a surplus. And Joe, you looked at this for almost the last 14 years, with the exception of 1 year. And we had a prior policy, which was, let me step back and say, we're here to talk about capital. And the reason this fits in with capital is that if you look at our budget, or if you talk to anybody on the staff or the trustees, we have no way to fund capital for the village. We don't have a tax source. We don't have a revenue source that goes to capital. So capital dollars either come from some of the special funds that we have, such as the Water and Sewer Fund, or it comes from grants, it comes from the motor vehicle tax, or it comes from money from the general fund. In other words, what we've been calling this excess in revenue over expenditures that we've said let's use for capital because we have no other way to fund it. So I wanted to start off by saying that's why it's a part of the capital discussion. And then the two parts to it, and Jessica, please interrupt me if I have this wrong. The first part that's here is we have had an unassigned fund balance of 25%. And we've done that for two reasons. One is that we're never entirely sure of the revenue that's going to be coming in from the state, from the federal government, potentially from other sources, yet we know that on a regular basis we have to pay our bills. And we also noted in the last couple of years with the state, there have been threats, there's actually been some late payments because of the economic situation facing the state of Illinois. So the best practice has been to retain 25% of our budget in this special account in case we need it for cash flow. That's one reason. And the other is we also know we have to always pay off our bonds. And so we want to make sure that we keep that money too in case there's a cash flow issue, recognizing that we do not want to ever have a negative effect on our borrowing power and on our rating. And we know that our rating is actually very, very good for a town of our size. So those are the two reasons. And my understanding in talking with Jessica is that she did talk to her colleagues, and that this when we put in the 25%, this was the best practice. This is what our comparable towns are doing, and that remains the case. So despite the fact that we may at times have a screwy state, 25% seems to be still a good operating norm, and so my recommendation would be that we continue with that 25%. And I want to say that because there are actually three parts to this. One, and then the second part is that we have actually a large unassigned reserve, this $4 million that we have there. And we do not have a policy about how we're going to use it. And I think that is a concern of those of us who have been working on the financial situation, that we have this money and we haven't said how we're going to spend it. So I think that's an important discussion, and that ties in President Sells with number two, certainly. Right. So that's the second part. And then the third part is, in past years, prior to the last 4 years, we had a policy, because we don't know how we're going to we don't have a way to fund capital, of taking the surplus from the budget every year and putting it back into the capital fund, so that at least we'll have on average $230,000, $250,000. So those are really the three components of that first piece. How'd I do?
Correct.
Okay.
Perfect.
Good teacher over there. So those are the three pieces. So the first piece is the comfort level with the 25%.
Correct.
And that's retaining in the special cash flow category in our actual annual budget a statement, money that's equal to 25% of our total budget or the general fund?
It is of operations.
Of operations within the
Correct.
general fund. I think my recommendation would be that we keep with that. It's served us well. We've had to dip into that in the past, and it continues to be a best practice with like villages.
I agree.
I would agree with that. Everybody else?
Okay. Then so there's one policy done, Jess.
One down.
Yeah. So then the second piece is perhaps a bit thornier, and that actually is two pieces too. Jessica alluded to this by talking about vehicles. The surplus in the recent history, in the past 4 years, has rolled into this unassigned $4 million. That's one reason it continues to build. So there are two parts to this. Do we continue to put the surplus into that or into any of the capital fund, or some part of it into the capital fund? And then as a subset, do we designate any of that for vehicle replacement? Because vehicles are a part of capital. And do we want to say that we roll some of it into capital, and then we have a subline in the budget that says X% of what we roll into capital from the surplus is for vehicles, or do we just keep it under capital?
Ms. Hamilton?
And I believe we should have a subline for vehicle replacement. I think Jessica alluded to the fact that it is a very substantial vehicle replacement. It's a very substantial part of the total CIP. It's recurring. We know it's happening all the time, and it's just very prudent to say, if we're going to set money aside for capital, a certain amount of it is going to need to be for vehicles, because those vehicles are, they're our rolling fleet, and we can't just wait until the end, especially when we say that that fire vehicles represent 75% of it. You don't just turn around and drop $750,000 on a fire truck, So I do think that we need to set aside some, we talked about it being a percentage, like say we did have a surplus of $250,000, maybe 10% of that every year should go in the vehicle fund, or whatever percent the board would feel was prudent. But I do feel that there should be a subset in which we've identified and are consciously thinking every year, we need to replace vehicles, we need to replace vehicles. And attached to that, and maybe not a topic for tonight, but attached to that, I think we need to review comprehensively the policy on when we intend to replace vehicles. And I know that to a certain extent, that has to be addressed on a case-by-case basis, because some vehicles are more durable than others. Some, we've all had cars that were great, and we've all had cars that weren't so great, But I do think that we need to have a general policy, and that general policy should take into account the fact that cars seem to be lasting, a little bit longer. Now, I know as far as police vehicles go, not just we. It's a difficult thing to keep vehicles in really good shape when you're using them the way the police need to use them for their jobs. But I do think that that's a policy, not necessarily for the CIP, but something that we should address at some point in time to be prudent.
And I'd like to add to that. I've always been an advocate of being as transparent as possible with the budget. And for me, one way to do that is that if we know we're going to have particularly a large expense coming up, either in the current year, say in this time in 2014 or in 2015, if we get to that, and we know it and we've committed to spending that money, then we owe it to ourselves, and we certainly owe it to the residents, I believe, to put a line item in the budget that says, we know we're going to be spending this money. So in the case of capital, I think that's important. And to Trustee Hamilton's point, I think it's very important. If we know we're going to be replacing vehicles, then we should at least estimate how much it's going to cost us. We know we're going to be spending the money, and make it transparent to all of us.
I completely agree that we should have a separate line item for vehicle replacement. That's an expense in and of itself. I would also suggest that we look at other line items that we might want to break out of capital. For example, information technology. We can't run this village without top-notch computers and software that goes with it. And I would like to see us always be planning for keeping up to date with information technology as another line item.
And actually, that's a good point, because in previous years, we had put technology expenditures in the operating budget, and Ms. Francis said that's because it's really capital and it has a longer life. Right. We should pull it out.
What we actually did was, in the past, what had happened with IT infrastructure is it was part of the 5-year capital plan, and it was done in all one lump sum. So you're talking about $130,000 expenditure that they would do long term. And last year I had made the recommendation that we change that because obviously certain technology needs to be switched out sooner, and so we should be evaluating it annually versus every 5 years. And so that actually went into the operating budget. We bumped up the operating budget as it relates to IT infrastructure, but it is under a capital line item under the IT division. So we do track it in that respect.
So I think there are a couple of decisions. One is, what do we do with the annual surplus? Do we put any or all of it into the capital fund? I think that's one. I think it seems as if there's an agreement that we have a line item for vehicles. But the bigger question is, say we continue to have $150,000 to $300,000 of a surplus annually, what do we do with that?
Ms. Francis, do you have a suggestion if we were to take a percentage of the year in surplus and put it in vehicles? Do you have a suggestion how much that would be?
Based on, just based on the capital plan in and of itself, since vehicles represents 33%, I would say any surplus, 33% would be a prudent number. So obviously it will fluctuate from year to year based on whatever the surplus may be, but then designating that to the assignment for vehicle replacement.
And does that 33% include the big ticket items like the
That's
pump trucks,
correct.
the aerial trucks?
Yes.
Well, so we might as well throw all this into the mix before we start plowing into this. I mean, one of the things that we need to look at in terms of the vehicles, I mean, there are vehicles and there are vehicles.
Sure.
You know, you have your police cars, you have your recreation vans, things like that. But then you also have the big ticket items that have 15 and 20 year lifespans. Like the pumper trucks and that are $725,000, $1 million. So one thought would be, and we're going to have to kind of jumble some of these things as we talk about them, with regard to the retiring of the bonds in 2014. I mean, if you actually take the big ticket fire trucks, for example, if you take the three engines and the 15-year lifespan patrol or service vehicle, those could actually be paid for by the bond issuance if we were able to actually effectively roll over the bond issuance. And there's a lot of ifs in what I'm getting ready to say, if we do that, then that 33% changes, because now we have pulled out of that percentage
Because
all
that's
of the big.
75% of
Yeah, we
33%.
pulled. So perhaps what we can do tonight is make the policy decision about, yes, we want to apply a percentage to vehicles, but then leave the actual percentage until we have that broader
Sorted
discussion.
out.
And I suspect, I have a feeling that we probably have a consensus that, one, this board does want to apply the year-end surplus to capital, and that we do want a percentage of that to go to vehicles. Is that yes, no?
Well, let me just, I struggle with this, and I've argued in the past that we should have taken the excess revenues over expenses and put it into CIP. But we never had a document like this before. Now, let's go to the question of transparency. Now, I'm not a financial wizard, okay? I am a very simple person. So if I have a checking account or a general fund that has $4 million in it, and I have a document in front of me that says I have $6 million worth of capital improvements, do you really have to take that $4 million and put it into a capital improvement fund to be transparent? That would be my first question. Because if you have a document, a good document that tells you what you have in front of you that you need to spend, and you have your savings account or your general fund, I don't think there's any need to parcel out the dollars into this goes to CIP or this goes to car replacement or this goes to whatever, because you know what you have coming. The other thing I like about this plan, because we've never had this plan before. You came to us with it last year, which was fantastic. And that's, I mean, I can look at it and I can see what I have. Now, I'd love it to be more people friendly. So, for example, you have a youth center in there. I don't think a youth center should be in the CIP in a particular year. That's a $6 million expense. I don't think anyone on this board would advocate spending, all the money they have on a youth center. You have some other things in here where you'll have the project is 450, but in a subline item you're saying the village is going to get 80% of a grant. So I'd rather see that 80, that what we're actually going to have to pay. That's me, because I don't like reading it all the way across the lines. But with that being said, I think we have finally a transparent look at our actual government finances. We can tell what we have in the bank, and we can tell what we have to pay. And if somebody says, well, you're sitting on $4 million, you say, yeah, I'm sitting on $4 million, but I'm also sitting on $6.2 million worth of capital improvements. And if I have to sit on $6.2 million worth of capital improvements, and I'm sitting on only $4 million in my bank account, I think it makes not only the trustees look very, very hard every year, which I don't question we do already, but it also makes our department heads look very, very hard at every year about, you know, what can we get from the state? What is possible? Does it really cost $900,000 to replace the roof at the train station? You know, you asked me that question, I got to tell you, I look at houses in Riverside, and maybe none of them's quite as big as the roof of the train station, but you're not going to tell me that a roof is going to cost $1 million. So there's something about that number, and for me to blanketly fund those type of numbers without really looking at why is it, what's driving that 900,000? And I'm picking on one thing. Well, what's driving that? Is it the tiles? And I think that's kind of what someone had said. Is it the tiles? Well, do we need those tiles? Preservation would probably jump down my throat, but can we put another tile up there? Can we pull the tiles off and rubberize the roof and put the tiles back on? Is there other options to do it? You know, I don't know if we've explored everything. Our pumper trucks, I don't know if we've explored, and I'm not saying you haven't, but, you know, I just read in the Landmark, North Riverside just, got $300,000 for a fire truck. It makes us look at those things every year, that, you know, if there's something coming up, we should look at those. And my question is, will we look at those things so hard if they're already funded? And, you know, I can answer for this board. I think we would look at everything very hard. But we're making policies that last beyond my next year and some of your other years. So I don't know if keeping things in two piles is necessarily the worst thing to do, even though I've argued against that in the past, only because of the way that Jessica and the village has done such a good job preparing this document. Because now we have something that tells us what we're going to spend in 10 years. And we can look at it hard at the beginning of every year and say, you know what, this is good. We need to do this. Or, you know what, there's cars in here. I'll be honest with you, there's cars in here that I wouldn't replace. I don't think we need to have as many vehicles as we do in the village. You know, so I don't want to give a false sense of this is what's going to happen to our department heads if they just know it's already funded. They've already, you know, they're funding it. I'd really like to have them come and defend their purchases.
But they do that, Joe, because everything over $10,000 has to come before the board. Even though we okay the CIP, it's not as if we're writing a check. They still come before us. So there's still two piles. I guess my argument is if we say, maybe you can help me with this, if we say that in 2014 we want to accomplish these projects, and we know that we want to accomplish these projects, then we should be straight up in our budget and say we're going to be paying this kind of money for them. And but Joe, that's for us. That's like sitting there with two different documents. And one of my points is that we want to know what the bottom line really is going to look like. If we're going to commit to a 2014 series of projects, whether or not the roof is in there, fire engine's not even in there for this year, but you know, whether the roof is in there or not, then staff will be coming to us for a final okay with the actual cost breakdown and the analysis. But if we're saying to staff and to ourselves and to the village, we think these are the kinds of investments we need to make in the village, then I think we need to, just like we allocate for personnel, let me finish, okay? Let me finish, Joe, let me finish.
Let me tell you, I agree with you.
and that we should put that line item on there. And I think that the other reason is that it may well, I mean, you may be better organized than me, but to have two documents is fine for us. It may not be fine for anybody else in the village who's trying to pay attention to what's happening with the money, not to show that as a line item. I think people who watch this or who are interested in this aren't going to sit there with two documents and say, oh yeah, on line 3, this is really going to be taken out of the budget. So, I mean, I think that's my other concern.
What I'm trying to say is I agree with you, but you just said 2014.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
So if you're saying that we should move enough money to cover 2014, if we all agree with the things in 2014, I'm 100% with you. But I'm not willing to move $2 million, $1.5 million, or $3 million, or whatever number, or the whole. I mean, there could be an argument saying that we shouldn't have any money other than the 25% in the general fund. Everything should be in capital. I mean, that's just as good of an argument, and that's probably the most transparent.
I'd like to suggest that maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. What we're trying to figure out right now is, do we want to move all of the surplus into the capital fund? All the annual surplus? I think that's the decision that's before us right now. And then the next one.
Yes, I think that's right. And we're heading to that discussion.
Yeah.
But in terms of, yes, Ms. Amos.
I just want to say that I do think we're talking about two different things. We're trying to direct the conversation, I think, on the policy of what we do about this unassigned fund that is building up in the face of substantial capital needs we have. I do want to correct one thing. The fact that we have $4 million in capital doesn't mean that we have $4 million that we can spend on capital needs, because we may have another year like this year where we've had catastrophic costs related to flooding and things like that. You need to keep money that would be operational related to that. And that doesn't even have anything to do with how late the state may be in paying us or something. We simply couldn't say we have $4 million, we have $6 million in needs, so we've got $4 million covered. We don't have $4 million covered. We can't prudently use all of that. But I do think in the face of this document, which outlines, and you can line up any number of projects, you can say this belongs, this doesn't belong, whatever. That is all to be discussed at a future point in time. But it's pretty obvious to me that some amount the board should be saying as a policy, we are going to take some amount out of that unassigned fund and move it into capital projects, and we're going to start doing something for this village, which is deteriorating right before our eyes.
So,
I'm going to just start the discussion by saying I'd like to suggest that we adopt a policy that says 100% of the annual surplus be put in the CIP fund. Just get something out there on the table.
Wouldn't have a problem.
I'll second that.
all right, so, and then, so I think we all are in agreement about that in terms of the, yes?
Well, I think that's fine as a policy, but I think from year to year, we're going to adjust that. I mean, there may be some years where the vehicle replacement fund needs some additional funding, or other funds need some additional funding. I would be more interested in, I mean, I would go along with it, that's fine, because it's just a policy, but I would be more interested in a policy that said something to the effect that we will assign everything above the 25% to something, so that where the public knows where their money's going to.
Well, and again, correct me if I'm mistaken, but the 25%, the cash flow reserve is not part of this $4 million that we're talking about.
Right.
That's the unassigned.
Right.
So I think that we've already established that we want to maintain a 25% cash flow reserve. So that has been taken care of. Now I think what we're saying is we want the year-end budget surpluses to go into the capital fund with some percentage to be to after we have
For
this
some
broader
funds, such as-
discussion.
Okay.
I actually
Some
think
percentage
Doug-
will go to vehicle replacement.
Doug is, but I agree with what you said, and I would say that Doug is raising one of the fundamental issues that Jessica is asking us to deal with, which is how are we going to address this surplus that keeps building as an unassigned when we continue
Yes.
to build on it? So I think that is, to your point, a very valid, that's the next policy issue in this number one.
And that really brings us to Joe's point. about whether we want to make some kind of transfer.
I disagree. I don't think we're there yet. I'd just like to suggest something. I think that, here's my view on it. One of the reasons in my opinion, that we have this unassigned reserve is that when we look at the projections over the long term for the village of Riverside, for the village of revenue, don't we wish, that we recognize that we will reach a point where current expenditures are going to be greater than current revenues. That the rate at which our revenues go up is going to be less than the rate at which our costs are going to go up, even without any kind of major changes. And I would like to suggest, my feeling on that is that's one reason that we have the reserves. It could be for Trustee Hamilton's point, which is there's something catastrophic. It could be because we'll see a longer term trend perhaps that will tell us that our annual revenues are going to be less than our annual expenditures. And I would like to suggest that we talk about a policy that says, that one of the reasons that we're holding, one of the reasons we're holding on to these, that we have this unassigned reserves is for catastrophic occurrences, and in addition, which would include any time when our current expenditures are greater than our current revenues. So, I mean, it's really, in a way, it's a broader definition of what Ellen said, which is there may be years when current revenues are going to be less than current expenditures. And that, for me, is one of the reasons that we have this greater than 25%. Because the 25% is really in case we don't get our revenues on time. Mm-hmm. We're talking about something else. So that would be, I see this big question mark on your...
I still think we're confusing two different funds. I mean, the 25% cash flow.
Right, we're done. Yeah,
that's done.
I'm saying that's done with. I'm talking about the money that's in the unassigned reserves.
But what does that got to do with 25%?
That's part of her number one policy question.
No, the 25% goes to the cash flow.
Right, but the other part of it is in here she says
for utilization of
it's in number one,
right.
Clearly. Yeah,
right.
So that's the other part of it.
But that's not a cash flow issue. The 25% cash flow is already
right.
set
Okay,
aside.
So that was misspoken for some kind of the eventuality, if there is an eventuality where current expenses exceed current revenue. Sorry for the confusion. That's what I meant. There may be years when we're going to need to use money that's not from current revenues.
Exactly. And I think that brings us to what Mr. Ballerin was talking about. What is? A more basic question is, why have a capital fund at all? Why not just have an unassigned fund and then go through it year to year? Now, I think that's a mistake. And I think it is a matter primarily of transparency. I mean, one of the problems, and even the articulation of it highlights what the problem is. Because for the last several years, we've been hearing this mantra that we have more reserves, more reserves, more reserves. That's what our residents hear, that we have reserves. But you know what? We don't have reserves, because I've got $6 million worth here and $4 million over here. So it seems to me that if we want, to Jean's point, if we don't want our residents having to compare documents, we should be able to say, here are the capital needs that we perceive for the village in terms of actually running this village, to your point. Mm-hmm. And this is our plan. Looking at this 10-year projection, this is our plan of how we're going to do that. Now, there are lots of ways we can do it. We do have right now in unassigned reserves, we have roughly $4 million. We are projecting, if the last 12 to 14 years has been any kind of judge, that over the next 10 years we'll probably have another about $2.5 million in terms of year-end reserves that will be going into the mix. So now we're at 6.5. And then we have the possibility that we'll need to discuss also as about the possibility of rolling these bonds over. So what I would suggest is to create a plan that addresses our 10-year capital needs. And at that point, we can decide what is the proper amount to move from unassigned reserves to the capital fund so that we are giving a realistic representation of what we need for capital and what can legitimately be called an unassigned reserve.
I'm sorry, Joe. I was just going to say, in addition to which, we haven't even had an estimate, staff work up estimates and consider what the effect of the CMAP priorities we spent 2.5 hours talking about last week are going to have on the additional capital needs. I would argue that it's just prudent to say we are going to set aside a certain amount of money every year for capital needs. We are going to address these things, and we're going to address them proactively. We're not just going to address them when they break.
I agree. Now, what I would suggest is, at this point, we know that issue now looms about whether we're going to make some kind of bulk transfer from unassigned over to the capital fund. I think before we can get to any kind of discussion about what that number is going to be, we need to take a look at some of the details in the CIP.
Have we finished, though, have we agreed that we're doing 100% of the surplus into a capital fund?
Or 100%, and then
That's
some
what I would
percentage
do.
of it, some percentage of that will go to vehicle replacement.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yes? Okay. So, since we have our department heads here who would like to talk about their proposals for the...
Ben, I have it.
Please, go ahead. Mr. Foley?
How often are these projects that we have in front of us, how often are they updated as far as the cost, the current cost to each item?
Annually.
So each
Annually,
year-
department heads review their list, and then they provide me revisions. Also, they revise the prioritization of the years in which
Are
they're
we Are
scheduled.
we tracking those costs? Are they going up? Are they going down on any certain project?
Well, the last 2 years, some of the construction costs have been probably holding steady.
Or going down?
This year, we have seen an increase in construction costs.
Okay.
But as far as like vehicles and equipment, the department heads annually do review those numbers. And
I mean, it's to Joe's point about looking at the specific project and its cost, I guess, is what you're trying to say, right? At that given time, at that point in time.
Well, these are placeholders. The
That's what I
numbers
think, yeah.
in the CIP are placeholders. They're not real numbers.
Because-
They're the best estimates that can possibly be done for something that's not going to
I
happen for a
understand
year or
that,
two.
but that gives us an idea of where our funding levels should be.
Right, and
You know.
we have to trust that staff is, trying to keep those as accurate as is possible.
Because they haven't gone out for bids or anything on
Right.
these. And,
I understand.
And also, they still have to come back to us with, so say we choose item number 5. They still have to come back to us for approval before implementing number 5, or actually going ahead with any particular vendor, supplier. So
Well-
these are,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would also add, too, that I think more to your point, which I think is that we have to look at what's in there, and I think we need a philosophy on, are these just the essentials to keep this village running? Or is this everything we might possibly want to do in the future? And the first thing that comes to mind is $6 million for a youth center. Should that be in the capital plan? Or is that just a wish list item? If we ever have extra money, we might consider doing that. And so, I think that's important, because if it's everything, the wish list and everything, then you're right. We're going to be throwing money into this that maybe doesn't need to be in there. But if it's just, here's what we need to maintain the level of service and quality of this village, that's a different number.
I can tell you that this document is not, there are no wish list items in here. Every item that is in here is items that I, working with the department heads, have identified as key components to keep the operation of the village moving. I do believe that the youth center should be listed in the CIP, because that is a very important piece of property, building that is going to have to be addressed soon, because we are starting to, it is an aged building that is beginning to have problems that in the next few years will need to be addressed.
Peter, how many of these projects are tied to the CMAP project? Any of these capital projects, are they tied?
A few of them.
they're related.
A few of them are related to?
Well, one could argue that the train station, I might argue, or Ellen, maybe you
Yeah.
want to do that. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think the discussion of the train station, what happens with the train station, how the train station is renovated, in what manner it's renovated, all relates to the discussion we had last week about should that be a visitor center?
Well, and it still needs a roof.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, so.
And it's an iconic building for
Sure.
the village, you know.
So what I would suggest is that let's just start going through this list. We have our department heads here. Now, one thing that I would want to point out that the trustees have, and I don't know if it was sent out to the residents. You'll see on the list on Plan 2023 under the column of funds, you'll see capital projects as a fund. There are two breakouts from that, however, that are relevant. One is the non-home rule sales tax, which is primarily used for streets, and also the Parks and Recreation items currently are being funded by Parks and Recreation. So as we go through and do our analysis, and we're thinking in terms of the unassigned reserves, those do not include the non-home rule sales tax and the Parks and Recreation. So perhaps the non-home rule sales tax really goes primarily to public works items. So maybe what we could do is start at the top of the list and go through 2014 and discuss the various items. And as we go through, maybe, Jessica, if you could just point out which items will be funded by non-home rule sales tax and which items would then be funded by unassigned reserves. Is that a way of proceeding? So the first item on 2014 is a fire department item, a command vehicle. So Chief Kimura, would you like to comment on that item?
Good evening, Board. 2014, first item for replacement is a command vehicle replacement for at 30,000. Is that the one you have in front of you? What page are you on?
33,000.
I'm sorry?
It's the first page.
Page 10.
33,000?
Right.
That vehicle is for replacement for a current assigned vehicle to Deputy Chief Buckley. That's a 2004 Crown Vic that is overdue for replacement. It currently has 96,000 miles on it. We're looking to replace this vehicle with a SUV 4x4. The reason for the 4x4 is during the recent floods and during the wintertime, we have conditions where we need to get into areas that require high clearance and also for a 4x4 vehicle. The idea for Deputy Chief Buckley, who remains in town here, is that he has the ability to take command of our incidents, and I want to set up the vehicle so that we have multiple radios and the ability to take command out of that specific vehicle.
So this one lasted 10 years. But on the list here, it suggests a 5 to 8 year.
Yeah, it depends. There's no secret formula as far as when we should be replacing vehicles, at least on the fire department side of it. A lot has to do with mileage, hours. The fire vehicles would be running hours at a time at an incident, at a potential long incident without any miles going on. So it has to do with history of maintenance and how many times it's been breaking down. So I know Deputy Chief Buckley's vehicle, we had a transmission problem recently last month. The gas tank busted, is that correct? So we had to replace the gas tank. So
How many SUVs do you have?
we currently have 2 SUVs. And they are one at each station. One is a support vehicle here at Station 1. That's the Expedition. I call that the support vehicle. That is the vehicle that goes out on EMS calls or any other calls that may be lengthy in time, or we need to bring the extra manpower that may not be needed as far as bringing out an apparatus. That vehicle is a 4x4, but that is more on a support need. And setting up that vehicle in a command situation then takes up too much space to where the support vehicle can no longer support the needs of six firefighters going to the scene or going to another incident. So.
And I don't think we should be caught on the fact that whether it's an SUV or whether it's a Crown Vic. I think the Crown Vic that you've always used, and I think we had this discussion with Chief Weitzel, they're not made anymore.
Yes.
So the next kind of the runner-up or the new quote-unquote vehicle now is the 4x4, which we just bought for the police department. It actually gets better gas mileage than the old Crown Vic and things like that. And this particular car is assigned to Deputy Chief Buckley all the time. So this is
That's correct.
This is not at the station. This is on his person.
That's correct. But operationally, like I said, we're trying to move it into a command vehicle, which is what we do not currently have that.
So the Crown Vic is not a command vehicle?
Well, it is a command vehicle in a passenger setting.
Yeah.
So.
Because I guess my question was, having replaced the clutch and the gas tank, do you have another year out of it now?
Well, no, it wasn't on the budget, so we need to have it repaired. So.
No, I mean, you just go ahead. Sorry.
Why does the deputy chief drive a 2004 and the captain drive a 2007? Which is also coming up for replacement too.
That's correct. So that's a good question. It's just that when I came on board here, that's the way the vehicles were assigned. So.
Because if I remember correctly, what used to happen, and I remember that I don't even know why I was at this board meeting, but the chief would get a new vehicle, and then it would just kind of roll down the hill. Deputy chief would get his old vehicle, and we used to get rid of the third vehicle, and I think that, I don't believe a captain always had a third vehicle. I think that was something that happened a few years ago because the fact that it wasn't worth a trade-in and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't cost anything to keep it. We might as well keep it, blah, blah, blah. So we kept it. Now it's costing us $35,000 to replace it. Mm-hmm. So the philosophy that it didn't cost us anything to keep it is now coming home to roost.
Okay.
But that's another story.
When I came, actually, we didn't have a deputy chief too. So I came, we had captains. So the captains had the two Crown Vics.
So do we have any other questions about this particular line item for the chief?
What are we doing?
I think what I would suggest is, it's up to you. If you want to, if there are items that you want to approve, we can do that. If there are items that you don't want to approve, I would suggest that we go through the list and then let people digest this. And then we can actually make our final decisions in August. But
Can we do that?
sure.
And I think that following that process will probably help the board then determine your point of view on we should move $1 million or whatever, I'm just throwing out a number over, or Trustee Ballering's point on we should only move what we need to fund for 2014. So.
Could we also
That's my point of view.
Could we also talk about if, like this command vehicle, this would come out of our capital fund. Other things on this list won't come out of our capital fund. So could we
We're going to have those segregated.
Could we make sure that we digest exactly what we're talking about funding and where it's coming out?
And just to get an overview, just to that point, the total capital projects expense that we have before us tonight, and this is the line item here that says capital projects, is $9,210,962. The non-home rule sales tax portion of that is $1,825,760. and the Parks and Recreation expense is $398,700. So if you take those two items out, we're looking at the capital project expense of $6,986,502. So the non-home rule sales tax and the Parks and Recreation expense are significant. But as we go through, we can have Director Francis, she can tell us which ones are actually non-home rule sales tax. Basically, everything that's on here that says Parks and Recreation goes into that $398,000 figure I just gave you. So, Chief, thank you.
Okay.
Don't leave. You're coming up again in 2015. So now we're going to plow into some of the big ones here under Public Works. And, Director Bailey, you want to? And the first one, and probably the one that's most controversial, has to do with the train station improvement for the not only the roof, and perhaps the best thing would be if you can just brief us on what this project actually entails.
Okay, I think that's a good place to start, is provide some perspective on what is the problem with the train station roof. And the initiative to replace this roof began several years ago. I'm not sure exactly what stimulated it, but I think the conditions that probably stimulated at the time still exist today. The problem with the roof is that it leaks around the edges, where the roof slope flattens out to the eaves. That's where the roof is actually leaking. If you went into the interior of the train station right now, you'd look up at the ceiling and there'd be no evidence of leaks. If you go up in the attic of the train station, you can see the staining on the wood trusses, the wood support structure around the perimeter again. There's also evidence of leaking in the valleys, some of the valleys at least. So it isn't like the whole roof is leaking. It's leaking at a point where over time we might expect that water will have the effect of rotting and destroying those roof support structures. The idea behind replacing the clay tile roof, one for one, or like the existing, as I see it, would be to maintain the architectural integrity of the building. It's it's obviously a historic, iconic building for the village. There are alternatives, but as far as replacing that clay tile roof, I think it's a very labor-intensive project. Those are very architecturally unique tiles. They're not generic off-the-shelf tiles. Each tile has to have a mold created for it, and then you have successive tiles made from that mold, but that tends to be a big part of the expense of either a clay tile roof or a terracotta building is creating that initial mold. And every tile is different, dimensionally different, architecturally different, needs a new mold created, a special mold created for it. I would think that in order to do that, you would have to take the entire roof off, inventory it, decide which, kind of combine the tiles that are the same, and then send those tiles that all need a separate mold off to a factory to be created. Then once you receive them back, have them reinstalled. We had Arcon, who's an architectural roof consultant, review the budget for the roof. This is partly in conjunction with some discussions we had with Metra to help maybe fund it. We've also applied for a Department of Interior grant several years ago to replace it. ITEP last year, I believe the village manager is applying for an ITEP grant again this year for funding to completely fund the replacement or to at least offset some of the cost. Anyway, so we had our roofing consultant review the budget, and he consulted with a roofing contractor who does clay tile, slate tile roofs, and a factory representative from a clay tile manufacturer to help confirm the costs. So from that standpoint, from what I know, I think that $900,000 is a legitimate cost estimate for replacement of the roof. You never know until you actually receive bids, and it could be higher or lower. But that's my perspective on the roof. That's how I understand it. I have a little bit of experience with these type of historic buildings and the tile aspect of things, and they are expensive to maintain, and this is an example. An alternative to tile, you could say, does it have to have clay tile on it? Of course it doesn't. You can look across to the north side of the railroad track and you see the roof structure on the north side has shingles on it. So that's certainly, if you wanted to talk about all the potential alternatives to replacing a roof on the train depot, you would have to put asphalt shingles in there. There's probably some other types of roofing material. You could even throw in things like a steel roof and so on and so forth. But as far as replacing the clay tile roof to replace the existing one exactly, I think $900,000 is a good cost estimate to work from.
What's the expected life on a clay tile roof?
Decades. I don't know exactly. Pardon me?
They're very susceptible to cracking if they're walked on. Once you set a clay tile roof, you cannot go on it. They're, to Ed's point, they are very labor intensive to come off. They're even more labor intensive to put back on. The molds that he speaks of, like the crown or the cap, the ridge cap, that's a certain mold. All the tiles that go around the base of the eave, that's a certain mold. So there might be 5, 6 different kinds of molds for these tiles.
For these tiles?
Oh,
For
Right.
these exact tiles?
Right.
We could replace it with another
You
tile.
could go to a common clay tile.
Would that affect our national historic landmark status
I
of
don't
the train
know.
station?
To the common person, I doubt that they would even notice the difference.
But Landmark, Illinois.
Because now you've seen slate roofs on homes. Now they make a composite slate material for roofs. And from the sidewalk or from the street, you cannot tell the difference between a slate roof and these new composite roofs. And the cost is half the price of what a real slate roof would be.
The village would have to be similar to what we had to, the process that we followed for the masonry work that was completed. We would need to get a sign off from the Illinois State Historic Preservation Agency, so they will probably dictate material, which probably contributes to the price.
But you could ask a question too, right?
We could
I
talk
mean, I don't know
about
about
it.
a different material
Right.
altogether, Mike, although that's a good
I
point.
mean, if I got you a clay tile and it didn't have the tiny little feature in it that makes our tile different, I'm sure that the commission would take into consideration cost of material as a hardship
You would think-
to us.
you would think.
You would think, I don't know.
Well, I would assume that the roof on the other side of the railroad tracks used to be a tile roof also, before somebody took it off and put asphalt on it.
Yeah, I don't know,
It
but
was.
it's.
That's not a historic, that's not a national historic landmark building across the Riverside.
But it's part of the train station, it's part of the train platform. But
It looks terrible.
I didn't say it didn't, I'm just saying it's,
Well, and part of that.
I don't think that we've explored this project nearly enough to spend $1 million.
Well, part of that 900 also includes replacement of all the gutters, the soffits and eaves, and as well as I think it took into account the possibility that there would be some work done to the membrane.
On a very nuts and bolt issue, let's use our mics so people at home can hear us. We all are starting to do a little bit of the leaning back. And as the low talker in the room, I use the mic. So I just want to make sure I understand this. So the one option is to actually take the individual tiles off, make a mold, and try to replace them exactly as they exist. Now, when I was on the Preservation Commission, a lot of times folks that had historic homes would come in, and what we were trying to do was to match, in essence, the aesthetic of the old material that used to be there. So if I'm hearing some of the other alternatives here, we could still have a clay tile roof or a composite tile roof that would closely match the aesthetics of what's on there now, that would not require this intensive labor of making molds and piecing things back together like a jigsaw puzzle. Is that right?
I would agree. You can get architecturally, I forget what they're called, but there's shingles, asphalt shingles that are architecturally more significant than plain old shingles. So there's a number of low-cost alternatives. It's obviously an important policy decision. I guess you could say that the die has been kind of cast as far as from the initiation of the project to replace the clay tile roof. It's really your decision more than anybody else's to decide that you want to change the type of roofing or
Well,
nature.
I for one would not want to risk the National Historic Landmark status, so I think that's an important question.
But I think that's something we can find out.
Peter can find out.
Similar to what our preservation, basically we would take probably to the Illinois Historical Preservation Agency, we would take our alternatives, and they could probably advise us on this. And the other thing too that I just want to throw into the mix in terms of talking about this particular expenditure is something that Mr. Bailey said in passing. We are actively right now in the process of preparing the application for the ITEP funding. And we tried last year, we're going to try again this year. What a reasonable alternative would be to explore these alternative solutions. At the same time, we move forward with trying to get the ITEP or the Department of Interior or maybe METRA some alternative funding. Because this is something that we have to address within the next 2 to 3 years. It's not something that we have to address this year. So I would like to have a lot more research and analysis done to see if there are alternatives at hand before we start committing to the $900,000.
I absolutely agree with the idea of researching what the alternatives are and bringing all of that before the board for discussion. What I thought we were trying to do tonight was placing priorities on how soon we would like to see those discussions take place. And I, for one, would like to see the train station kept in the forefront of something we need to address.
I absolutely agree with that. I think we all agree with that. Yeah. This is something that we're talking about in the very short term.
Yeah.
So I'd like to have it remain in 2014.
I
But
would
at what
too.
number?
Well, at some kind of place marker number, maybe not $900,000. We're not writing a check for $900,000.
No, but I want to look into what are, I guess, alternatives or applicable alternatives to us going with this custom tile by tile handmade terracotta roof. I'd like to look at some cost options on that.
Have we looked at, have we looked at repairing the roof? When I had my roof, I have a cement roof. And it's been up there as long as the house has been up. When I had to have work done, they come in, they pull the tiles up, they do what repair they need to do, and they put the tiles back down. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't $900,000. The average eye, when you look up at it, doesn't look like the tiles are broken or the tiles are damaged. It looks like you have what is, you have leaks between the grout and cement and stuff like that, and it's causing things. Have we explored keeping those tiles, removing them, replacing, putting a rubber membrane on the roof, putting the tiles back down?
As far as I'm concerned, this is the first time, at least from a village board perspective, that I've heard any discussion, recommendation to do anything but replace the roof on a train station. Administratively, we have had, we obviously know that there's alternatives to replacing the roof with clay tiles to match the clay tiles that are on it now. My sense from the village board's perspective is there hasn't been an interest in exploring alternatives. You could replace, theoretically you could take these tiles that are a problem, take them off, and theoretically at least put new tiles on there. One of the consequences of that is you'll have a two-tone roof. Now, that might be something that you're very satisfied with, but clearly if you have tiles that have been up there for, say, 100 years or whatever, and you put new tiles on them, they're going to be dramatically different colored. But that's, you can make that choice. That's certainly an alternative, is replace the, let's just say the bottom 10 feet all around the perimeter of the building, and that might repair the leaks and preserve the integrity of the wood structure underneath it.
How about this as an alternative? I mean, we all agree that this is something that needs to be addressed sooner than later. We also, I think now, especially having just heard that we haven't really even made the attempt to really do this analysis. Why don't we, because next year we're going to be looking at Plan 2024. And why don't we just stipulate that this item, between now and then, we will do this research, and by that time we'll know about the ITAP grant, and we put this on for 2015 when we have better numbers for the and for all we know, this will end up being the right route to go. But right now it seems to me that we don't have alternatives.
Well, we haven't explored alternatives.
So that's what I would suggest. I would suggest that this not be part of the 2014, but that we make sure that when we do this again next year, that we're looking at this project in 2015 in terms of getting it done.
I guess I'm generally in agreement that we need to do more research. We need to know what all the alternatives are: repair, replacement with more modern materials, whatever. We need to know all the alternatives and some estimates on that. My only question, I guess, is do we need to put this off till 2015 to accomplish that? Or is that something we can do as part of the budget process later this year? And I guess it's up to Ed or Peter to tell us.
There's no reason we can't amend the CIP.
Well,
later on in the year.
We can leave it in there for now, but the real decision is in the budget. It was when we approve the budget, correct? That's when we got to decide we're proceeding in this fiscal year or not. And just, if we take that approach, we've got 2 months to do the research and come back. Is that enough time? Can we tackle this in the budget process as opposed to waiting another full year? And maybe we'll decide in 2 months that we need to wait another year. But why do we need to decide now?
The other thing is if we can replace it with say a like tile, or we can, and I'm not talking about repairing it by pulling off the bottom 4 feet and putting in another tile. I'm talking about taking off the bottom 4 feet, putting those tiles back on there, just fixing the substrate underneath it. I don't know if that's possible. I'm not a roofer, but that's what they did to my house. I would like to look at that. I would like to look at different tiles. Will I consider, or would I ever ask the residents of this village, should we put up asphalt? No. But I got it. This is one of the reasons why I have a hard time transferring money to cover expenses in bulk like this, because we've been looking at this $900,000 figure for 4 years, 3-4 years. I'll take, maybe we should have had this discussion a year ago, but we didn't because we thought it was going to be, we were going to use someone else's money to pay for it. But if we can get this 900 down to 450, I bet you we have a lot better chance getting the grant at 450 than we do at 900. Or if we get this 450 to 2 1/4, I think you got a lot better chance. But we have to look at all the different options, and I think that we actually have been remiss not looking at this before. This should have been a discussion we had a year ago, 2 years ago.
May I just ask one more question of Ed?
Pardon me?
The Archon that you used, would they be a logical source to ask for some input on suggestions on?
Sure.
Because they're the experts in the architectural
They could
integrity.
probably provide some.
I mean, they've only been asked a very narrow question.
Yeah.
How much would it cost to replace? We haven't even used the consultants we have properly. I would think we haven't asked them the questions we
Sure.
would like them to ask.
Sure.
They need it, right?
Okay.
Well, I'd like to suggest that we leave this alone for now, given what we've discussed already, and ask the staff to come back to us in the budget process and either say, we need more time, or here's all the information you need.
Sure.
Okay?
And then we'll
All
make
right.
that decision.
Let's roll.
All right, since we've got like 18 more pages to go. So let's just keep going here, Mr. Bailey. Now, if you'll just start walking us through the rest of these. Next is the gate operator for the Department of Public Works.
This is deferred from 2013. It's an automated gate opener, nothing necessarily radical about it. It's definitely one of the more popular items with the people that have to open that gate, especially in the wintertime. I received quotes 2 years ago for about $8,500.
Any questions about this?
We need this, though? I mean, they can't get out of their truck and open the gate.
Well, it's a struggle in the winter. We manage to get it open. We have at least one female employee that sometimes is the first in the morning and has to sit there and wait to get it open. We're beginning to sell fuel to other organizations that will have 24/7 access to the facility.
So you're concerned about it being, accessed at 2 in the morning to get fuel and not closed properly behind them, or?
There's injury issues, sometimes when it has to be opened is the dead of night in the dead of winter.
Okay.
And there's a slip and fall type injury situation. It could occur, doesn't mean it will. But on the other hand, you could see that happening.
Okay.
So you say that one of the reasons is we're starting to sell fuel to other.
We sell fuel right now to, I think, District 96. We're going to start selling fuel to District 208.
So if we're doing something to make their life easier with an automated gate, couldn't they maybe help pay for a little bit of it?
Well, I think part of the fee that we are charging them, it really is to recoup the cost of the fuel, as well as there is an additional markup that
For the
helps for the
administration.
maintaining of the tanks, the pump, and in this case, the gate. So
You're satisfied that markup is sufficient
Yeah.
to cover something like this?
at this moment,
Okay.
That markup is 1%.
1%.
And 1% of how much gas? How much have they used there?
Not much.
So it's not, 1% is not going to pay for a $10,000 gate. It's not going to pay for,
No, but
it's not going to pay for the clicker we have to give them to get in the car so they can get into the gate.
But
They have
I
to buy
guess
their
you
own
can make
clicker.
the argument that it's no different than when you go to a gas station.
Time talking about $10,000.
You're not paying part of
I got you.
Okay, let's keep moving here. Any other questions about the gate?
No?
Okay. And if you just want to keep walking us through
Okay.
these.
Fleet maintenance software. This is kind of a standard for most fleet operations. Many communities have it, many organizations have it. It's computer software to manage the maintenance of your fleet vehicles. In this particular case, it would be the Public Works Department, Fire Department, and Police Department. It would capture repair expense information to help direct whether or not a vehicle is at a point where it should be replaced, help support a recommendation to replace a vehicle, help schedule maintenance, and provide other record-keeping and management tools for managing the vehicle fleet. We come to your meetings here recommending vehicle replacement. Frequently don't have a lot of information to present to you on, kind of justifying it. And this is one of the things that helps do that.
That's a great idea. Can I ask you a question? You say it's going to be for you, fire, and police. Is that 17, 17, and 17, or Public Works picking it all up?
No, this is a quote from CFA Software, which is one of the dominant fleet maintenance software suppliers in the Chicago metro area. We still get other proposals, but this proposal anticipates that other stations would be included. And the police department, fire department would have their own station. They would be managing their own vehicles. The public works department wouldn't be keeping track of.
But it would be one charge of $17,000 and
Yeah.
would cover all of our departments.
Right.
Okay, next.
Next is this resurfacing of East Burlington Street. This is a partially federally funded project. I think you're all familiar with this. The SDP Grant Surface Transportation Program grant shares projected to be $382,500. The local share would be $127,500. This is scheduled for 2014, February 2014 bid letting. You know, I think you've been involved in discussions. It's partly driving the discussion about streetscape issues in the downtown area.
Yeah, this is the basis for the ITEP application we're putting in August for the potential streetscape on Burlington.
Next item is
that our portion of this would be non-home rule sales tax, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Zero turn mower. That's what's called a Z-Track mower that we have had on a 3-year replacement cycle. We have 2 Z-Track mowers that we use throughout the summer to mow the grass. This is a purchase price where we also trade the existing mower in. Obviously they're going pretty steadily during the summer, get a lot of wear and tear. This mower might go another year or 2, but then one of the things with waiting is you start accumulating equipment replacement issues. So like I say, these mowers have generally been on a replacement cycle, and that's what this represents.
Could you have one in 2015 also?
I think there should be a different one. Is that the Z-Track also?
It says zero turn mower.
Okay. We did replace one a couple of years ago, and we have 2.
So we're replacing one of those in 2014 and one in 2015.
That's this one here. This one probably wasn't replaced on schedule. We just got one, I think, 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago. So they would be on cycle on a 3-year.
Why is one 13 and one's 12? The one in 2014 is $13,000, and the one in...
Well, they should be the same.
So these things have a lifespan of 4 years? Is that what you're...
The 3-year replacement cycle was started before I arrived, and I imagine that is based on their wear and tear experience.
Okay. Spot painting of water tower.
That water tower is prone to paint peeling. We went through quite an exercise a couple of years ago with a number of experts, including the executive director of the Illinois Masonry Institute. And the best recommendation that we could come up with is that the village plan to schedule like $10,000 every few years to spot paint the tower where the paint is peeled off.
I have a question. Did we say that if we wanted to just okay some of these, we were just going to do it, so to speed up the next night?
If you'd like to, yeah.
I just want to know if...
I mean, that's fine with me if
Some
there's
of these, for instance,
consensus.
this one, I'd like to approve. The Burlington resurfacing, I'd like to approve. We know we're going to be paying for that. And then when we come back, it'll eliminate some of the redundancy, if that's okay with my fellow trustees. Yeah, Mike likes that one. So I'd like to propose that the resurfacing for East Burlington, the spot painting of the water tower, well, you haven't gotten to the sidewalk, but I'd also like to propose the sidewalk replacement are all okayed for 2014.
So we got the spot painting, we got the zero turn mower, we got the resurfacing, we have the fleet maintenance software, the gate operator.
I would say we need to add the fleet maintenance software to that.
Okay. What about the gate operator?
Still chewing on the gate.
Okay, so leave
I'm
that
still
one
chewing on
aside.
the, well, the fleet maintenance is fine, yeah.
Um,
Okay, so then
and-
that would speed us through the next
Right.
meeting.
What about the command vehicle? We still want to think about that one
Yes,
as well? Okay.
I do.
Okay. So next is the sidewalk replacement, and
I propose we accept that also.
well, as you know, this is a topic that's dear to my heart. I've been talking about sidewalks for a lot of years now. And I had a discussion with Mr. Bailey earlier today. The situation we have right now is we currently have a list, and you can fill in the numbers of a lot of squares that are defective in this town. One of the problems that I've had in the past is, and perhaps this is my old lawyering days, when you have a list of something that's defective, you're opening yourself up to problems if somebody trips and falls on it. So I asked Mr. Bailey earlier today, how much would it cost to actually fix the defective sidewalks that we currently have in the village? Now, one of the things that Mr. Bailey has done in the last several years, which has been a major boon to the town, is instead of replacing, he's also gone to saw cutting. So if it's feasible to actually grind these things down instead of replacing them, we've been doing that, which has dramatically reduced the cost. So the approximate cost he gave me today for catching up, so to speak, is $400,000.
Is how much?
$400,000. Now, another question I asked was because one of the things that we've talked about as a board is we really want to try to start bringing sustainable infrastructure into our village. Why are we not looking at sustainability in terms of our sidewalks? And there are two issues. And again, Ed, jump in here and correct me if I'm wrong. One is, in Mr. Bailey's opinion, the technology really isn't there yet in terms of sidewalks. And the other thing is that because of the peculiar location of sidewalks, you don't have a lot of the runoff problems that you have with, say, a large parking area, because they're usually adjacent to yards.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that runoff is already going into a permeable spot. So it's not necessarily a sustainability issue with regard to sidewalks. Now, the other question that we've talked about for years is the difference between exposed aggregate and just regular brushed concrete. Exposed aggregate is about a 25% premium if we want exposed aggregate for our sidewalks. What I would suggest is that we take that $400,000 number and we decide as a board what we think is a realistic time frame to catch up and get our sidewalks fixed. I mean, my personal opinion would be at the longest would be a 4-year span. I would like to have a comprehensive plan over the next 4 years to try to repair our existing defective sidewalks.
I'd like to see us revisit the 50/50 program. Ed and I were talking about it earlier this evening. It was done in years past, and it wasn't done with great success. I think that's because of the marketing of it to the residents. A lot of people didn't know about it. I certainly didn't know about it. I wish I did, because I think I replaced 17 squares. But I'd like to see that, and I think there's a way of taking that $400,000 number and chiseling it down even more. These residents that have squares, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're probably not paying more than $200 a square.
Yeah, it's about 180.
About 180. So $90 can get a square fixed in front of your house. I think if the residents realized that and knew that, well, it's 90 or it's 200 to me if I want to get it done now. It's like the tree program. I think...
I mean, is it like the tree program? I mean, it seems to me that sidewalks are basic infrastructure. To me, sidewalks are streets you walk on.
I think
so why are we having residents pay? Why are we having residents pay for something that seems to me is an integral part of our infrastructure?
I think that residents would be willing to pay for it because they realize that it is something that is technically not theirs, but by the time they wait around to get it fixed, it could be forever. And if I had...
But I just said it's not going to be forever.
Well, but it could be, right? And if I have 6 squares in front of my house, and I know that that's going to cost me less than $600 to fix it, just do it now. Especially if I'm tearing up, if I'm having any other concrete work done on my property, i.e. a walk, a patio, having my apron redone, the guy's there, do the sidewalk, you know.
Well, plus the other thing you had mentioned or you alluded to is that we're saving considerable amount of money because of the saw cutting. Just think if 10 years ago, someone would have said, you know what, we should spend $400,000 and replace all those sidewalks that are defective. New technology has come along and we could have saved ourselves a lot of money. So I'm not willing to jump in that far. I think we have 50 this year, we have 100 next year. If I read, I think 2015 we have 100,000.
But that's because it goes to an every other year funding source. The $50,000 we currently are spending puts our sidewalk repair cycle at 120 years, and an average sidewalk square lasts 50. So we don't have.
We got 170 squares this year?
$400,000.
Oh, I think we do.
$400,000 to repair the current list we have of defective sidewalks. And I'm talking about sidewalk squares, both that need to be replaced and both that are susceptible to being saw cut. In terms of technology, we're not going to come up with technology that's going to make a broken sidewalk suddenly mend itself.
But I said, but you said we had $400,000 to get us up to date. In my mind, that's 50,000 divided by 400.
Well, that 400,000 because we're going to have it because they continue to deteriorate. So you're still going to have an annual repair schedule as new ones break. I'm talking about trying to catch up with the ones that we know are already broken.
I wouldn't go with you with 400 though. But thank you.
Can I ask how are you defining a defective sidewalk?
That's a good question. When I look at defective sidewalk, I'm primarily looking at it from a hazard, liability exposure standpoint, cracked, broken, chips out of it. One of the aspects I think that I don't know that the village has necessarily thought about a lot or paid much attention to is Americans with Disability Act issues. For instance, the village doesn't have a transition plan that was required under the ADA Act. I think we were supposed to have one by 1993, where we were to look at all of the barriers to equal access and inventory them, catalog them, prioritize, and really make those a priority to repair. There's also what's called the Public Right-of-Way Access Guidelines that was just published or is about to be published by the Federal Highway Administration, which really is focusing on accessibility for public infrastructure. And that is beyond just broken, cracked sidewalks. There's things like a 2% cross slope of a sidewalk that if you're walking or driving down the street and you see a sidewalk tilted, it's probably exceeding the 2% cross slope and probably doesn't comply with ADA requirements. And if you were in a wheelchair or in a walker or something like that, trying to navigate on that sidewalk with that cross slope, you would understand why that is, not compliant. So anyway, what I'm really focusing on is, for the most part, and it's tough decisions sometimes, but there's also the rough, uneven surface issue. That if there's a lot of spalling on a sidewalk square, I'll probably plan to remove that.
The reason I ask the question is I think we need to take a more nuanced approach. I think we need to identify the more serious trip hazards and the more serious problems and address those right away. Yeah, I know in talking with our insurance provider or another insurance provider for another village, I guess. If the trip hazard is 1.5 inches or exceeds 1.5 inches, it's a serious liability. Mm-hmm. If it's less than that, not so much a liability. It's still a problem, should be fixed, but So as one example of a more nuanced approach is anything, if we have trip hazards that are 1.5 inches, 2 inches or more, we need to fix those now or as soon as possible. It needs to be a high priority. If it's a 1-inch trip hazard, maybe that can wait a year or two. So that's the main thing I want to say. The other thing, though, I want to add in, whatever we do, we need to provide enough money so we don't have to fix the trip hazards with asphalt. Because I know we've been doing that, and I think that's something we shouldn't be doing. I think we should either shave them or replace them if they're that bad. We need enough money to be able to at least do that.
What is the rationale for having $50,000 to start with and then going to every other year $100,000? Why isn't it just a given annual amount?
Well, we've been on $50,000 for some years. I don't know exactly how many years.
4.
4. Okay. I think the suggestion is that, to really make progress, we ought to be increasing the funding level.
But we're not increasing the funding level.
We don't increase it till 2016.
But that $100,000 is for a 2-year period. What we have before us right now is $50,000 a year.
For 2014.
Well, no, for the whole thing. Because when it goes to $100,000, it's every other year
Well,
we're
there's
giving the
$50,000 in 2015, and then $100,000 in 2016.
But 2016 is for 2016 and 2017.
Okay.
So and I don't know why we're going from 50 a year to all of a sudden 100 every 2 years. So one, I would just make an annual contribution to it. But I just want to reiterate what I said a minute ago. At $50,000 a year, we are on a 120-year replacement cycle for something that lasts 50 years, which means, as far as I'm concerned, we don't have a replacement cycle. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest that we increase this 50, because prior to it being 50, it was 75, and we were still falling behind. So I would suggest that we increase this to $100,000 a year until we get caught up.
I would agree with that. But at the same time, to Doug, I'd like to see us prior, A, B, C, A being the really bad ones that need to get looked at right away.
Do we have that?
And bring back some sort of a program, a shared program.
We certainly can offer that as a voluntary program. There's no reason in the world that we can't offer it.
It's hard to hear you down here when you...
I'm sorry. There's no reason in the world we can't offer a voluntary program to residents who want to expedite a repair, right?
But I think in fairness to them, we need to have that priority list, because
Right.
I'd hate to pay for that and find out the village was going to do it.
Right, exactly.
Anyway.
Do we have a priority list?
No. Not
You have a
like
spreadsheet.
it's being suggested there, where we, to do that, you would go out and inventory all of the sidewalk in the village and identify all of those vertical displacements over, say, 1 inch or something like that. That has not been done.
So we don't have a priority list. So we don't know, all we do is we target an area.
That's what I've been doing most recently.
And you try to target that area, and then you go down that area, and if you see something that's a problem, that falls within your criteria, you fix it.
Yeah.
But that's not entirely true, because you've targeted school areas and
Right.
safe routes
That's
to
what I'm saying,
kids.
it's a particular area.
Yeah, but with schools in mind.
With a definition in mind.
Yeah.
But you target that area, and you may be replacing something that's minor in one area, but it could be 3 times worse somewhere else because you don't have the priority.
Absolutely, I absolutely know that, because I'm actually quite intimately familiar with large parts of the sidewalk. It's not that necessarily exciting, but there's vast amounts of sidewalk I have never looked at, quite frankly. So that's just a change in approach, and it's really more about canvassing the entire community and then identifying the most severe problems and prioritizing them.
Here's a crazy idea. What if we asked our residents that if they had a bad sidewalk, an exceptionally bad sidewalk, I don't know of anyone that doesn't have a cell phone with a camera on it. Take a picture and email it to Public Works Department. And that way, then the Public Works Department would start having a catalog of what they can consider the worst places. Does it cost anything more when we bring in Glover and Andreas to say do 2 on Lawton, 2 over on Delaplane, 2 over on, so it doesn't cost us any more or less, it just costs us per square?
And I routinely take calls from residents reporting defective sidewalk. And that's part of, but I still go out and look at it, and frequently it isn't just one square at their house. It might be squares in each direction for as far as the eye can see, they're actually defective. But
So we do the work in July, but you start planning, I know that this is an ongoing effort on your part, but you go out and mark these squares sometime in May? Is that when they're marked? June?
typically, depending upon when I think when I want to let bids for them, sure.
Okay,
Well,
so,
and then this year, though, it's probably, the program is taking place a little bit later than we normally would have it take place, in that Ed, working with that Public Works Consortium, had a number of communities where we pooled
Right,
the number
right.
of squares. So.
but if we were to send out a blurb in the water bill or something to the residents in June and say, hey, you see the squares that are marked in front of your house, if there's any others that you don't like, you can jump in on it and get those taken care of for X amount of dollars, whatever it is. But I think we should put the earnest a little bit on the homeowners too.
So to move forward, is this one that we want to think about a little bit?
Absolutely. I think
Okay.
we need to be more aggressive with it. I would also, for Peter and Ed's sake, I know of one other village that worked with the college engineering program and got a free inventory of their entire village and their sidewalks, identifying all trip hazards and other sidewalk issues. So that might be an opportunity too.
Okay, so we'll put this one on our to discuss list, okay? The next one, the Reconstruct York Road, that is also non-home rule sales tax money.
That, if you're familiar with York Road, it's, as legend has it, it's started out as an alley that was resurfaced, so it's never been an engineered roadway. We've had, there's chronic drainage problems with it, and there's really no way to fix the drainage. There's no, very few structures, very little grade. It's just one of these things that it really is time to reconstruct the roadway and establish the drainage. And once we started moving in that direction, we realized we had really planned it to propose for this year, but then we realized that if we're going to reconstruct the road, we really need to replace the water main that's underneath it, that's elsewhere in this proposal, in this capital improvement plan. But that's, would be a major street project for next year.
Okay. Next is the,
Do we want to approve that, or do we want to?
well, that's non-home rule sales tax. I mean, that, there's actually money, and we
Right,
can
so-
approve
but
it,
that's
yes.
not a
That's
discussion
right. Yeah,
point
we
for
could,
us
yeah,
then.
I would approve it, yes.
All right, so,
Is everybody else? Mr. Foley's not here, we can just start approving
oh,
things.
good.
All right. Next is to replace a pickup.
This is a four-wheel drive GMC with 58,000 miles on it. It's about 10 years old. It's used for snow plowing in the winter and trailering lawn mowing equipment and whatnot during the summer. Fairly heavily used equipment, a vehicle that is showing its 10 years of wear and tear. And the $27,000 cost is off the state purchasing list. Current, it might be different next year, but it's just one of those timely things that we could get more years out of it, but you don't know how many. And so I thought, well,
I mean, this includes the plow and everything, so it's,
no, we wouldn't get a new plow as far as I'm concerned.
so we put the old plow on this.
Yeah.
I'm surprised the truck has lasted this long if it's used for plow snowing and salting and stuff like that.
And it's a GMC, and I think they have had some issues with front-end suspension parts not really lasting. So just one of those things that it's, if not now, when?
So is this an approval?
I would approve it. Yeah.
Okay, next.
This next one is tree removal, emerald ash borer. Originally, when this capital improvement plan was being developed, I suggested $62,000 for this. That's what was budgeted last year. But just in the last couple weeks, well, and let me just back up and just mention, as far as the emerald ash borer infestation pattern goes, it usually ramps up slowly, and then all of a sudden it kind of explodes, and the vast majority of the ash trees are killed over a 2 or 3 year period, and then it slows down quite a bit. We think that we're heading into that major time period where a lot of them are going to be killed. You can see them starting to decline, especially with the leaf out that we have bare branches. We started out with about 1,100 ash trees on public property. We're down to about 750. We're just sending out now a request to the contractor, our tree contractor, to take down another 50. We've expended about $50,000 of the $62,000 in this year's capital budget. We're planning to spend money from the emergency tree removal fund as the year goes on and it looks like we're going to get out of the storm season. And we also
Well, this number was actually suggested by our village forester, right? Based on his.
Yes.
Right.
And let me just say that I didn't, but I should and plan to also recommend $200,000 for next year. I was really kind of focused in the last week or two on getting the number raised in this year's, but I think we should be talking about $200,000 for 2015 also. It should say just $62,000 there now.
I'm willing to approve this for 2014.
Trustees?
Yeah.
Joe?
How is the,
Hold on just one second. Yes?
Well, I was just going to say, I don't want to spend time on it right now. We've got enough to do, but I need to know what our Emerald Ash EAB program is. As a new trustee, I don't really know what our approach is to that issue.
We have a policy. We can provide that to you.
Yeah, that's what I assumed, but I'd like to see
Maybe you could
that.
just resend it to all the board members.
Okay.
Thank you.
and the Morton Arboretum was out and they did some treating around to some of that. How has that worked out?
Morton Arboretum, as an experimental type approach, is treating about 100 ash trees. A lot of them are in the Indian Gardens area. I guess it depends on your perspective. They think it's fairly successful, but we can still see decline in some of the trees. And that's one of the whole things about treating ash trees is that there's no 100% silver bullet way to protect them. Some will survive without treatment. Some that are treated will die, no matter that they have been treated. But I think it's still early on in that process. But again, just some interaction with Morton Arboretum folks, they think it's going well. And we might say, well, yeah, but there's dead branches on some of those trees also. So
this $200,000 is basically just taking down dead trees.
Well, it's trees that are in decline. We haven't taken down too many that are healthy, that don't show signs of decline. We have been kind of proactive in taking trees down that are in, say, around schools. Just instead of waiting until they start losing branches, we're getting those out of the way that are particularly hazardous areas. But again, part of that also is not waiting until you have thousands of dead trees and then you have to deal with them. We're trying to kind of keep a little bit ahead of the curve, or keep up with the curve. But generally speaking, they have to show signs of decline before we'll take them down, or residents sometimes will call and ask to have their ash trees taken down in front of their house.
So next is the thermoplastic street
I'm
park.
sorry, I have one more question. Does the Morton Arboretum then, their procedure, is that supposed to actually save the trees or just prolong time before they have to be removed?
Well, I think their goal is to preserve them, and in fact, as I understand it, the Morton Arboretum person is working with chemical suppliers or chemical manufacturers, might be more than one, to apply their products to trees and then monitor their their status.
Because even though there might be dead branches, if their treatment is effective, they could save the trees, right? I mean, you could cut down the branches and still have a healthy tree for
Possibly.
potential.
If you, I don't think that's predictable, though.
Right, because it's
Right.
an experiment. I mean, that's all I'm saying is
Sure.
we'd hate to cut down all our ash trees if in fact they're correct, right?
Well,
Wrong, maybe?
I think they become a public safety hazard. There's many other communities you can go to, and you can go down street after street where they're lined with dead trees. And one of the things about ash trees, I think they're a brittle tree generally to begin with, and once they're killed by emerald ash borer, they become even more brittle, and the bark sloughs off them, and big branches will fall off. So it's a policy decision on the part of each community, but we have aggressively pursued their removal.
And I would add that Ed and Mike Collins, our village forester, have spent considerable amount of time exploring what other communities have been doing, as well as consulting with Morton Arboretum, the other Arboretum, I forget the other one.
Chicago Botanic.
Chicago Botanic.
Department of Agriculture.
Department of Agriculture. So the recommendation to the policy that the board adopted that really is more of a removal and reforestation was based on the assessment that was completed by our village forester and our public works director.
So we're okay with it? That's okay. Next is the thermoplastic street markings. I think this is also a non-home rule, correct?
Correct.
I'm not sure how we fund it. Okay. This is actually I think the trade name is more thermoplastic. It's melted plastic that's applied to the street as pavement markings. They're left turn arrows, crosswalks, that kind of stuff. Much, much more durable than paint. The lifespan of these thermoplastic markings might be 3-4 years compared to paint. You probably don't even get a year out of it. And $20,000 represents an estimate of what it would take to do the whole community. We think, we may not decide to do the whole community. We probably focus on the central business district, school areas, and I'm concerned about putting thermoplastic on roads that are in very bad shape. It doesn't really make much sense if the streets aren't going to be around very long. But that's what this is thermoplastic pavement markings throughout the community.
Versus paint, right?
Versus paint.
And what's the difference?
Durability,
Then cost-
primarily. Pardon me?
Cost difference.
I haven't costed out the paint, but it's probably even more costly labor-wise than the paint.
Because we do it in-house.
It takes weeks on end for someone, a month or more, for someone to go through the whole community and repaint all the crosswalks and lane markings and stuff like that.
I guess I'm in favor of this. I think that Public Works is very thinly staffed as is, and if there's a way to, it's almost a trade-off, right? It's the labor cost versus this. I'd like to just propose we do this, but not do Burlington, because we know we're going to be resurfacing Burlington this year. I don't know, Joe, Mike?
I just want to know the difference.
No, I'm just saying I would propose that we accept this with the exception of Burlington.
Well, this is for 2014 anyway, so it can be done after Burlington's resurfaced.
Right,
Okay.
just not do it, I'm sorry, just not do it until after, you're correct, until after Burlington is resurfaced.
Okay,
You're right.
as a meeting procedure thing, now, we've been at this a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Mr. Scalera just suggested that in terms of going through item by item like this, we probably only realistically need to do this through like about 2016. So, which is quick, because it's only, and what I would suggest is, since Mr. Bailey's already going, why don't we just finish, let's just go through the Public Works proposals for the next couple of years, and then if there are any proposals, Public Works later on than that you have specific questions about, and then at least he can go home. And then we can just do the same thing with everybody else. We'll just go through them, because I think we're going to find that a lot of these are going to go much faster than the earlier ones we've just been talking about. So is that all right with everybody to do that? So Ed,
Jump to page 11.
yes.
In the middle of the page 11 is 2014 Public Works. The first project on there is the Swan Pond Relief Sewer. That really...
But now that's water and sewer fund. Do we want to talk about things that are funded other than the capital projects, or do we want to focus on the capital project funding?
Just capital, I would say.
Capital project funding. So the first one, Ed, would be the youth center roof.
Youth center roof, well beyond its life expectancy. It's one of these items that we, from a staff perspective, we believe it should be on the list, not forgotten about. This $330,000 estimate is a year or two old. Ultimately, I think the larger question is what do you want to do with the youth center, but the roof is one of those drivers that says you can't, there's a trade-off for waiting. Sidewalk replacement, again, that's just...
Before we just go, I think what Mr. Bailey just said is a really good point, and it goes back to this whole broader discussion about whether we're going to spend $6 million, which is another pie-in-the-sky number that we don't really have any justification for. I mean, what I would suggest is anything having to do with the youth center, or the former youth center, is that I hope we start calling it, is that we have that discussion as a separate discussion. Because the reality is if we're going to do anything significant with that piece of property, that's going to be something that we're going to be taking to the voters anyway. So I personally would defer any large expenditures like this on the former youth center until we have that discussion. That would be my...
I lost something here. We're on 2015 now. Are we going to allow Mr. Bailey to go to 2023?
No, he's only going to go to 2016.
2016.
Yeah. Okay. So the sidewalk replacement we've already talked about. That's on hold.
The ash tree removal, I recommended that be increased to $200,000. The Central School crosswalk, that's the crosswalk in front of in the front door of Central School. Yeah, one end of the crosswalk delivers pedestrians to a barrier curb. The other one delivers pedestrians to the front, to a driveway, which obviously has accessibility and safety aspects to it. One of the most significant costs of this, however, is the upgrade of the traffic signals that are there. They're antiquated. If you move traffic signals, you have to make them modern, upgrade them.
This is not home rule sales tax also, yes?
Well, we have been thinking about applying for a grant funding for it.
Oh, okay. Ms. Francis, isn't this the one that you had looked into whether it was susceptible to non-home rule?
It is, for non-home rule.
So it's susceptible to non-home rule, but you say you're looking for grant opportunities?
It was, at least was eligible for an ITEP funding. That changes, the eligibility changes almost year to year.
So we should hold off on this one then, yes?
Has anybody discussed upgrading the signals with District 96?
No.
I mean, they're sitting at $41 million. We're sitting at $4 million. It would be,
I did ask that question of our finance director.
I mean, I'm just saying, if we're going to upgrade the traffic signals, it's for the school district. I mean, they work fine the way they are, but I would think it'd be something we'd want to at least discuss with the 96 board.
I agree.
Okay. Reset railroad platform paver bricks.
If you walk on the railroad platform bricks, you know that there's a lot of unevenness, trip hazards, so on and so forth, and that's what that project proposes. I have another zero-turn mower program replacement there.
Hold on just 1 second. What does everybody think about the paver bricks? $50,000?
It's a lot of bricks there on both sides.
There's a lot of bricks to be, even on the railroad, on a pedestrian crossing. Pardon me?
I'm just asking.
That figure was derived with the help of Archon when we were applying for the grant through the West Suburban Mass Transit District, where We had applied a grant that would have re-tuck pointed the building, replaced the windows, as well as taking all of those bricks off and putting them back on. We only got money for the tuck pointing, but the 50,000 figure, that was a very rough estimate that was provided to us by the consultant.
So is there, what do you think about that?
This is the same consultant who told us the roof would cost us $900,000?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes? Okay. The zero-turn mower, we already have talked about. The resurfacing of parking lot 5.
That's what we might call a police department parking lot right out at the east end of this building. You can go look at it, determine whether you think it's appropriate to resurface.
When do we talk about sustainability?
Oh,
there?
that's what I was just going to ask, if we looked at the
We haven't,
possibility.
no.
I think that we should.
Okay.
I would like to see an alternative for that.
If you want to leave it in there, we can, this is being proposed to you, and you can say, as far as I'm concerned, no, we don't want to do that project, or, obviously.
No, I'd just like to have a sustainable alternative
Yeah.
to consider.
Okay.
I'd like to do these, I just want to revisit the costs, that's
Yeah.
all. This brick thing,
Yeah.
just want to look at the numbers again.
And the zero-turn lawnmowers, how long does it take to get one? I mean, are these they're obviously not like ambulances where you have to order and it
No,
takes
they're-
6 months to get. I mean, I assume it's somewhere between that and going to the John Deere store and buying it off the rack. So they're somewhere in between.
The state purchasing program, we would typically use like other vehicles that we purchase, but you end up going to a dealer. Circle Tractor, I think, might be the supplier that we might go to. The state authorizes certain dealers.
But these things are, you need, if one broke, you can.
Absolutely.
You can call up Circle and say, we need a tractor, and it was $13,000, not the state bid, send us one over, and we'll take delivery on Monday.
Pretty much, not, if they have them in stock, all that other kind of stuff. But generally speaking, they're readily available. They're.
I mean, I think, I personally think that you buy them when they break. Unlike police cars, fire trucks, things like that, that take a long time to get. These things, you can get in 2 weeks, or a week.
I agree with you, but I think we keep confusing the idea of putting something in a capital improvement program with authorizing the expenditure of the money. These, as Jessica said when she outlined originally, things in here get moved from month to month, from year to year, just because it's in here. But I do think it's prudent to say, how likely is it that we'll have a mower that'll break that year, and I've got a plan for that. If it doesn't break, don't spend the money.
I agree with Ellen.
I agree too, then we move the money.
Yeah, they're placeholders. They're placeholders. But these expenditures will still be considered seriatim as we get to them. So. The next is the.
That's anticipating, street program, that's anticipating a street program, a street improvement program, primarily resurfacing in 2015. We don't have streets identified at this point, but it's a placeholder, I guess you could say.
And that again is non-home rule.
Pardon me?
That's also non-home rule.
That would be MFT and/or non-home rule sales tax.
Okay, so now we move to 2016. You're almost done, Mr. Bailey. First up is the 2005 Toro Ground Master Mower, which I would suspect we have a similar feeling about with the zero-turn mowers. We have as a placeholder.
This is the big mower, this is the,
Right.
Yeah, we have a vehicle replacement program that needs to be updated. I need to do that. And this was planned for replacement or scheduled for replacement maybe this year or last year. But it seems to be in good condition. So again, I wanted to put it in the plan, not right away, but thinking about it into the future, just to make sure we know that it's out there as a potential expense. But if it's in good condition in 2016,
Okay.
I might push it out further.
So leave it as a placeholder at this point? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, no?
Yes.
yes.
Joe?
Yeah, they're just, well, we're documenting, I mean, if we're not gonna knock things off, then we might as well just say, these are just placeholders, they're just placeholders. And let's go home. I'm serious, I mean, right? Because we're gonna leave it in there, and we're not gonna say we're gonna spend it. We're not gonna say we're not gonna spend it. We're gonna say that they think that this is something that they need at that time, so it's a placeholder.
Every year
So-
when we decide, based on the budget, how much money we're going to spend for capital, then we're going to move things
Right.
up or down.
Okay,
But-
so it's a placeholder. So I think that then if that's the case, then we should just, if we're gonna do anything, just really look at the big things and say, do we think this $900,000 roof should be a placeholder? Everything else could be in here. And let's just, I'm serious.
I tend to agree that we
I
don't.
agree with that, Joe.
We're spending a lot of time talking
Right.
about minutia.
I agree.
Decide what items for 2014.
So what are you saying? Is that what you want to do? I mean, we really tackled the big ones. We've looked at the $900,000 issue with the train station. We've looked at the $330,000 issue with the youth center. I mean, really, that's a good point.
I think we've given, well, I guess the test comes from the department heads, whether or not we've given good direction to them tonight, which is for any items, but particularly for the big ticket items. We want to see the alternative ways of handling them and what the costs are related to that.
Yes.
I personally think that the things that have been deferred for a long time or that present potentials for severe deterioration, like the problem with the train station, let's look at that sooner rather than later. Now, does that mean I want to spend X amount of dollars? No, it means I want to look at it. I want to look at what all the alternatives are. And I want to look at that in 2014. I don't want to look at it in 2020, And I do think that the department heads have done a great job of saying, we need all of this equipment to do our jobs, and on a rotating basis, we're guessing we're going to have to replace something every year, and so we're putting a placeholder in for it. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time talking about that, because I think our department heads are going to come to us at the appropriate time and say, you know what, it's just not worth putting any more money into that Toro Master, let's replace it now.
So if you learned anything
That's the
tonight,
direction I think.
don't
Give
come
it.
up first.
I was really happy when I was
Yeah.
first, because, oh man, I'll be done first and I'll be home in
Let the
bed by
chief
now.
come up first.
Tried it all out on you.
I'm learning
Easy.
their lessons too.
But I do think that we have articulated, perhaps, I think that Mr. Bailey has said, this is not a direction I've received recently. And we've given him some directions that it seems that we are in agreement on it, Maybe we haven't come to an agreement yet on how much money we're going to spend, but we do have an agreement about how we're going to consider how we're going to spend money in the future.
I agree 100%. Think out of the box.
So are there any items on this 2023, then, to go to your point, that we think simply don't belong here?
Well, I think certain items, and certain people have already said this, the youth center really just belongs in its own category. What are we going to do about the youth center, But having it on here, I don't have an objection to that. Jessica clearly marked it as unfunded, so there's no getting around the fact that there's no money to do anything with it. But what are we going to do about it? Let's keep that in mind, rather than knocking it off the list and not thinking about it.
So what is, if I'm hearing you right, then what we really want to talk about tonight and have explanations for are the 2014 items, or are you satisfied with the other 2014 items that you see on here and you don't need any further
I have a couple of
description?
things that I think I'd like to see come back to this with the budget. One is, I'd like to see some money go into the future years, and right now it's just a guess, for CMAP priorities, And then the other thing is, when we do have our discussion about what's going to happen with the pump station property, and I don't think there's any money in there to address that.
I would actually like to go through the 2014 projects, because those are the ones that we're going to have to deal with one way or another when our department heads come to us later on in the year.
And it would be a shame if they came and didn't talk.
Well, they're here already, and they're having such a great time, and we're almost through the list anyway.
But
But
that means you're finished, Mr. Bailey.
I'm done having my great time.
You're done having a great time. Well, no, your great time is starting.
You know, I actually appreciate the feedback, and especially with the newer village board, but from my own perspective at least, it is helpful to me to understand what your priorities are, because lacking communication of your priorities, I set my own, what I think is the best thing to do or whatever, and it's sometimes, you know, I don't know if that's, you know, the right philosophy or not, but. So
Well,
that's
Trying to figure it out
I look forward to more talks about sidewalks with you, Mr. Bailey. All right, so
Police.
back to work here. I guess Chief Whitesell, you're up. Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
See how long we can torture the chief for.
And Mr. Queer, I guess we are finished with your section as well, right? We have no other questions for.
We're just going to talk about.
We're just going to talk 2014.
Well, we have other ones on 2014.
Not unless the fire chief wants to stay in
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, there
split you
are
up or
other
something.
14,
Yeah.
fire chief.
On the one board.
Yeah, you were split up on 2 different pages, sorry. All right, Chief Whitesell,
Do you want me to go through my items, Mr. President?
please, starting with the network copier.
The network copier, if you remember, it was deferred last year. We have a standalone copier now. We split the expense with the fire department. We were asking for a new copier that would be networked to our workstations for PDFs, emails, et cetera. We're not able to do that, and neither is the fire department at the moment. And it's hit 1 million copies. I turned that paperwork into the manager some other time. It had a life expectancy of about 800,000. It's exceeded that. So, and it was deferred from last year, so I put it into this budget. That is an estimate. You know, we may come in a little less, seeing what Jessica was able to get for the village's similar system last year, but that's a quote that we got in 2013.
Trustees?
My next item is a replacement lockers.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
go ahead.
Chief. Does the current copier work at all?
It does work. Now, we make hundreds. Unfortunately, Cook County is still antiquated in the court systems and the clerks. We have to make hundreds of copies every day for arrests for the defense attorneys, prosecutors, clerk's office, state's attorneys. And the fire department has their own paperwork they generate for the hospitals, et cetera. So it's used constantly. But it is still actually working, but we average about 2 to 3 service calls a month.
And does it do PDF and networking?
It does not.
Well, that's a big issue to me. I mean, that's like trying to work with, stuff from 25 years ago.
Or at least 5.
Like I said, that cost would be a 50-50 split with the fire department.
I don't have a problem with that.
If the fire chief is still agreeing to do that. So, my next item was
So
the
are we okay
replacement
with
lockers.
this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, replacement lockers?
The lockers was originally put on the CIP in 2010, as you can see from the notes. It's been deferred for 3 years. This past year in 2013, the company came out, gave us this bid that's listed here. They no longer make those particular lockers. Those lockers went in when the station was remodeled 15 years ago, maybe longer than that. They don't make the locking systems. We've called our locksmith Fulmer. They don't produce those locks anymore. So the officers lock their guns in there. That's individual lockers. So I do think it's a real issue. I think some of you have been down to see the locker room before during the tours. And it's been, this will be the 4th time I've had it on the CIP budget since 2010. And I could furnish that 2010 memo that I gave the board that time, at least at the budget discussions in the future, if you need that.
I'll take your word for it.
I have no problem with that.
I think it's time.
Plus, there shouldn't be carpeting in a locker room.
No, I wasn't chief when they designed that. I was still a patrolman.
So now we have 2 patrol vehicles?
Vehicles. Now, I have 2 vehicles in the rotation. Now, the rotation has got a lot of discussion over the years. It presently really is a 4-year rotation, meaning that we look at the cars. But I come to the manager in January when the state bids come out for police vehicles. If we don't need to replace two, if my expectations are that one of the cars is better, we don't do that. If it does need to have two, we would do that. I did add the detective car. The detective car was rolled down from the previous chief from 2007. It has about 87,000 miles. By the time the bids go out for the squad cars in 2014, it'll be close to 97,000 to 100,000. That car's been traditionally rolled down to the deputy chief because the detective gets more use out of the car. He has to travel out of town. He has to go much farther distances to do criminal investigations than just the officers here. So my car has been rolled down. That's been the process. The chief's car has been rolled down to the detective, and then the detective car was rolled down to the deputy chief. The detective's car is not a take-home car. He uses it only on duty. And in call-outs. So I think by the time that comes up, that year we may need 3 cars, but we may need only 2 because we may be able to get by with only 1 patrol vehicle. But I do want the board to know, just because I have 2 in there, I come back and discuss it with the manager and Jessica, and if it's something, I wouldn't come to the board and say I need 2 cars just because there's 2 cars in there. So we would look at it. And now with the new cars, like the Deputy Chief Buckley knows this, these new cars they're issuing us, they have idle time on there, which is a really good indication. In addition to the mileage, we can get real numbers for the board on how the cars are used.
Okay, next.
The cameras, the CCTV cameras, they were deferred from last year also. But those cameras are the inside cameras. They're the cameras in the booking room, cells, and the outside, front and rear, and storage capacity, and the system that stores. Those videos are routinely subpoenaed by defense counsel and prosecutors for what actions take place in our booking room, field sobriety tests, or DUIs, or in many cases, our insurance company really mandates that we have these cameras in the cells and in our booking room for liability and for suicide prevention. So those cameras currently, the cameras themselves in the cells are 9 years old. The camera in the booking room, I think, is 5 years old. And the storage capacity, the unit that runs it all, came originally over 8 to 9 years ago. So that was an estimate we got in 2013. It was deferred. I was told I could expect a 5% increase from what the cost estimate was for 2013. I believe it's an essential tool for our liability purposes.
Trustees?
No problem.
Access and control was an issue that's been deferred many times. It was split between us and the fire department. It's really a card system, or at least that's what we were looking at the time. So this 37.5, Chief, that's one that we would be splitting, one cost we would be splitting. So it's not 37.5 times 2 for each department. But right now we have the push numbers. It would give us better control and access, including the evidence room, locker rooms, in our case, the booking room, and our cells. In the Chief's case, it'd probably be his paramedic rooms and some other areas that we could look at. To us, it was an important tool. It's not essential. It's not like the current system isn't working. The push system is working. It's just this is our version of what we think is the best practice.
Why is it also under the unfunded section for fire?
I think that's just maybe Spencer. I think he put it in his budget too, and then we put it in our budget. But that number will be split between the two of us. So it's not
37.5 is the total.
So it's really,
It's 37 total, right?
so it's really 18,750 for each of you,
That,
right?
Yeah.
18,750 for each of you.
correct.
I have to say that explanation sounded kind of weak to me about that. That sounded a little bit more along the lines of something you'd like to have, but maybe isn't really pressing.
From my perspective, I believe in for evidence collection and evidence storage, and also control for employees. I wouldn't say discipline issues, but for me to use it for issues that we may have have with employees spending time in the station or not spending time in the station when they're not supposed to be there and keeping them on the streets. I know that sounds a bit harsh, but it's a way for us to monitor it and to use it as a tool, more of a modern tool from my perspective as a chief.
Because you have electronic access to that information as opposed to just the push button.
Yes.
From the fire department operations standpoint, I am looking at a system where I can have an ability to control who comes into our firehouse and at what time, because right now, when we have a call page out, firefighters come to the station, the only mechanism I have to be able to track that is by hand and them signing in. So the ability to have an access electronically for them to come in would help me tremendously. The other issue I have, we have employees that come and go as far as employment here. So every time I have a discipline reason for an employee being terminated, we change the combination to those locks, and it's been done 4 times this year.
And
at a
how
cost
much is it
about,
each time it's
that's
done?
about, is it $600 or so? About $500-600.
Have you had problems with access?
After hours, yes.
What kinds of-
Unauthorized access.
And you don't know who?
No, we've used the security cameras to figure out who's been on the property when they're not supposed to be present.
And there are people who no longer employees, you mean?
They've been disciplined, and another one has been asked to leave.
But the key card wasn't changed quickly enough, is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that we don't have a key card, we only have combination
But you didn't
locks.
change the combination in time for it to keep that person out, I'm sorry. Is that what?
Well, it was done, once the termination occurred, then we changed the combination. So the problem with the combination is, once that's shared with personnel, we don't have that mechanism. So the ability for the key card is, once somebody swipes, once we deactivate the key card, then they won't be able to gain access.
I do think it's a best practice to have electronic monitoring of who comes and goes, especially in a police and fire station.
Yes. Trustees?
I'm not certain about it. I'm not exactly certain what's going on, because I've heard a couple of people for some of these. Have any of these other ones been approved?
They're all in placeholders.
Well, are they all still in there? Is that what you're saying?
I'm serious. I don't mean to be funny. I'm just saying they're
Well, we get 2 more shots at all of
Right,
this.
exactly.
The budget, and then when they actually go to buy it
Not the
and
budget.
stuff.
We don't talk about this.
I think in the fire aspect, this will
It's
help
given
with
the CIP
payroll
number.
as well, right? Because when they sign in for the call is when they're on the clock.
That's correct.
So
So we
this
can
will help-
utilize that
This will
as,
help with your payroll.
right. But that's not the primary reason. That's just another
Sure.
added benefit.
Well, because now we're not just talking placeholders. I mean, we're actually, because the next discussion we're going to have here is about transferring money. So we're actually, we're not making final decisions, that's true, but we're also trying to get an idea of how much we're realistically looking at for 2014. So,
Okay, but I'm very confused, because I thought you started the discussion by saying your preference is not to okay any projects tonight.
But then you wanted to say if there are things that we were okay with, we were going to say we were okay with them. And that's what
Right.
we've been doing.
So, but then we're still going to...
That's so that we don't have to come back to the...
Right, but that's not everything.
No, that's not everything. So we're going to think about this one, I take it. Okay, the next is the detective squad.
Yeah, I spoke about this. She had another issue in it. And Mr. President, if you wanted, by Chief Kamara's here, if you want us to, there's only one issue we have in 14 on the 911 budget, if you needed an explanation on that on the next page. There's a $100,000 item on there.
But that would be E911 funds.
Right, that's the E911 fund though, right?
Yeah.
That's 100% funded by 911.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about But we haven't talked about the detective squad yet.
No, that's the squad, the detective squad. It was put on there because of the amount of mileage it has. It currently has 87,000 miles. I believe from current estimates, it'll have somewhere around 97 to 100 by the time the bids come out in 2014 for squad cars. It may be a little bit less than my placeholder because it would be an administrative car. It wouldn't be the same patrol car, but that's based on what the state bid has been, and that also includes changeover. What it doesn't include, I'd like the trustees to remember, is our trade-ins. So, if you remember last year, we got between $8,000 and $10,000 for each car, so it brought our cost actually down from that. But I don't figure those in, and Jessica advised me not to do that until we really have hard numbers and when we go to trade them in.
Okay. Anything else for Chief Weitzel? Guess you're done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So the next two items are Parks and Rec items, and these are, as I mentioned earlier, these are actually items that would be funded by Parks and Recreation, but let's hear a description.
Well, obviously the most significant purchase on there would be the 15-passenger van. And based on the state pricing, we may actually, for no more than that estimated cost, we may be able to upgrade to a 20-passenger minibus, which we would like to do if possible. This would allow, right now we rent all of our vehicles. We rent 15-passenger vans. We rent buses for any kind of day trips. So this would allow us to not only transport our day camp for field trips, this would also allow us to do senior and teen trips in-house. It would also allow us to expand our kids program, the kindergarten enrichment. We would have the ability to go to local schools, pick up the kindergartners, bring them to our facility, which we don't have that capability right now. Parents have to work out that transportation on their own. So it would be an essential part for our development and for our expansion.
How much do you currently spend on renting vehicles, do you know?
Over the course of the year, probably about $5,000 for the year. A lot of that depends on if we get enough people to sign up for a trip, then we rent the bus. If we don't, then we don't incur that cost. But on average, it's been about $5,000 a year in rental.
Where would you put it?
We would have to park at Public Works. And since Ed left, I'm going to go ahead and say that's probably okay with him. We would do we would have the ability to lock the vehicle, and then it would go in the locked, gated yard with the other vehicles. So we would store it there.
So does it have an 8-year life?
I would have to, and once we decide on the model, then that's something I would get from the manufacturer. I'm assuming it would be based on the usage. It wouldn't, like our vehicles, we don't have idle time. We don't go great distances, so I would imagine 5 years would be minimal as far as any kind of replacement. That said, our current pickup truck, which we use just in town, I believe that's 10 years old, and we have not had to replace it.
But you have to get at least 8 years out of it to make it cost effective, right? If you're renting things for $5,000 a year.
Right, but that's just the cost. That doesn't take into consideration the revenue we can generate by having this bus. That would offset the cost as well.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Would you still have to rent it? Would you envision that you would have programs with such large numbers of people that you'd still have to rent?
We would, for the larger scale trips where we would need to rent like a school bus, there would be no way around that. We'd have to rent buses for
So it wouldn't take
that.
care of all rentals anyway?
No. But the majority of the rentals we use are smaller vehicles. For the day camp, we use 15-passenger vans that we currently rent throughout the summer. And a lot of times, too, based on availability, the cost of, right now we don't rent a 20-passenger bus for anything unless it's a specific trip. If we had the vehicle, we could program a lot more trips.
And you might be able to run more trips that don't necessarily have a full capacity on them because
Correct.
you have a vehicle as opposed to having to have a minimum number in order to rent a vehicle, right?
Right. In order to cover the cost of the rental, we would need to guarantee a minimum. Now, if we had a trip with, 11 people instead of 20, we could still run it because the vehicle's in-house.
Right.
And this has all kind of come out of the success of the day camp. you've really seen the need in the day camp because you're renting the 15-passenger vehicle for that, and the amount of response you've gotten from the community in the day camp is amazing. I mean, it's full, completely jammed to the top.
Yeah, that and the kindergarten enrichment program has grown exponentially as well. And the only way to kind of grow it further is to provide to work in that transportation component.
Okay, next.
Next is just our annual ball field restoration. That is to renovate all of our ball fields. That's something we don't have the equipment or the material to do. We do run the day-to-day maintenance, but we do hire a service that comes in, repairs the ball fields, trims all the infields, adds material, will reset the base plugs. Very extensive work that pretty much sets it up for the wear and tear that it's going to incur throughout the year.
How much is that?
$12,000.
I'm sorry, no, when you hire somebody to come in and do.
That is the
Oh, that
cost.
is what it is. I'm
Right.
sorry, okay.
We handle the day-to-day operations, so small repairs will drag the ball fields.
Oh, I see, okay.
Right.
And this cost is is also offset by revenue that's generated by.
Little League, yeah, I was wondering about that.
Do you think that this cost will actually go down now that we've had the discussion that prevailing wage doesn't apply to maintenance?
I believe it will. I haven't visited that because we had already had our renovations done for this year, but certainly going into 2014, we would either get more extensive work done for that price or the same work for less, I would imagine.
Anything else for Mr. Macchiotti? Thank you, sir. Thanks. Now, Spence, you get to come back after all this time. It's an encore. So first up is the command vehicle.
So this is the second command vehicle. Currently, it states on the notes that it's assigned to Captain Sherman, but really, this vehicle is assigned to the officer in charge or the on-duty officer. The ability for a officer to respond from home is extremely important to the organization and operation. If that wasn't available, then that individual would have to respond to the station and then grab a vehicle, put their gear on, and then respond in that fashion. Operationally wise, they have a command officer first arrive or get there in a timely fashion, provides a degree of safety and the ability to get our operation in motion. So to be able to size up, take a look at what is needed, elevate the alarm, get more resources is very critical, especially when we're not staffed between Monday and on the weekends or evening hours after 6 p.m. So this person is extremely important, and the vehicle typically does remain in the village. There is ability to go outside the village, but if, for instance, Captain Sherman is not working, he isn't instructed to drop the car off here, then we have a system of giving that vehicle to somebody who may remain in town to respond.
I'm going to ask a question. How many miles are on it? Is there anything wrong with it?
Current mileage is around 50,000 miles right now, so I'm looking at that 5-year replacement. So ideally, in the operation, as Deputy Chief Buckley Carr would like to have the same command setup, but in this particular case, I think we can get by with another smaller vehicle.
I have to say, I'm not sold on this one. What do the rest of you think?
I guess I'm curious about when Joe asked you about the shape that's in it. You said,
It's actually in pretty good shape.
so then why do we need to replace it?
Well, again, this is an emergency response vehicle, so I would want to get it on a rotation basis. So that's along with the police cars. So
I gotta say, that doesn't make sense to me.
You have
to-
I mean, you just said it's in good shape, and if it's in good shape, then it doesn't need to be on the replacement cycle right now.
Yeah.
Well, you're asking me to come back to the board, and the purpose of the CIP is to plan, so that's what I'm doing, is to plan a replacement cycle for vehicles that are essential to emergency operations, so.
Trustees?
Does that mean that it has to be replaced in 14?
So we'll have your car, we'll have A.C. Buckley's car, and then Captain Sherman's car. So we'll have 3 sedans in the command,
Replacement with
in
it.
the command fleet, if you will.
Correct.
But this is the one we didn't used to have, right?
Right, I don't think we've always had 3. I'm sure that the third car came down as I mentioned earlier, came down as it was older and it just moved down and blah, 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 didn't cost much to keep it. I could be wrong. I don't even know why I was at that board meeting.
It was
Mr. Wyatt was the president at the time.
It was before I arrived, and I believe the reason why I went to a 3-vehicle command vehicle structure is that a change in the actual command structure
Right.
took place when Fire Chief Bednar's retired or left, and Chief Mulligan assumed, and then broke the deputy chief into 2 deputy chiefs, and each deputy chief was assigned a vehicle.
But
If I recall correctly from.
And if I understand the chief and Joe about the placeholder, you're not saying we're buying a car this year, you're saying we're planning in case we need to. Or are you saying you're advocating that we actually buy the car? this
Well,
year?
I'll come back to the board and we'll have the same discussion, and I will recommend whether or not it be replaced. So if it does need to be replaced, then
But do you anticipate it needing to be replaced in fiscal year 2014?
that's what I'm anticipating from this time forward, yes.
I think that's why we're confused, because we hear you, I'll just be very honest, because
So-
we're talking about a 5-year
Sure.
rotation, because that's probably what you, sir, would consider to be a best practice, yet the car may not be ready to be replaced. I think that's what the question is about, right?
You're 100% correct.
Yeah, so I think that's what we're trying to kind of wrestle with.
Okay.
We've wrestled for the last several years, for those of us who've been on the board, about whether we need an actual vehicle replacement rotation policy, as opposed to having you or your colleagues come to us when you actually believe the vehicle's ready to be replaced. Because we have such a small fleet, it could be done on it could conceivably be done on a one-off basis. I think that's what Joe, how am I doing? And then,
Perfect.
yeah, I think that's what we're wrestling with, and we have wrestled with.
Is there a lot of idle time on a vehicle like this?
I'm sorry?
Is there a lot of idle time on a vehicle like
Yes,
this?
a lot.
I
So,
think this
but-
is one of the reasons why that first thing that we brought up, that
Right.
$17,000 program is the most important, because then we're not guessing on this stuff. We're always guessing. It should be
Yeah.
3 years, it should be 5 years, it should be
Right.
2 years. I would, it's an emergency command vehicle that has 50,000 miles that travels no more than 2 miles, because the village is only 1.5. So I don't see the necessity myself, but that's me. That's me.
And again, it's not about the mileage, it's about, the
Yeah,
other,
it's overall
the wear and tear and everything else. So.
And
And so
maintenance
the
costs.
question is, if it's not 2014, then when is that? And so I think that's, I get the frustration and part of that, but
When our mechanic says that your time costs more to fix it than it does to keep it, I would say somewhere between that and now. I mean, are these all maintained at Riverside Garage? Because I see all the time on the thing, Riverside Garage. you
yeah,
take
these
squats.
particular staff cars are pretty much primarily maintained there.
So I
Or
would-
under warranty. Well, all the vehicles are out of warranty now, though.
So I would assume if we asked for a maintenance history
Yeah, we have
I'd be
that.
able to give that to us.
We have a maintenance
So
history.
am I hearing that we think this does not belong in 2014?
It doesn't sound like it doesn't sound to me like necessarily when the chief comes back to say, okay, I really want to replace this, that it's going to be in dire need of replacement. But it could, I don't know. You know, he said he's put it in here, but it could just as easily be in 2015.
That's correct.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is that if you just look at it generically, the life cycle of this vehicle, this would be the year that you would expect it to be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, it should be in the CIP,
In the
and it should
CIP.
be in the budget. But the chief is doing his job and saying, hey, there's a good chance this car could last longer.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we hope it does, and if it does, we don't buy it in 2014. And we hope that it goes another year.
If we did have, for instance, a policy that said, like it says here, 5 to 8 year replacement, putting this in 2014 has it in the 7th year, so it's prudent to say, you know,
It's
it's
a
coming up.
placeholder. It's a placeholder.
It's
It's a
coming up,
placeholder.
you know, but
Because we want to be ready if it does die.
I'm with you on the placeholder.
So are we
thing.
ready to make a decision on this, or is this one of the ones we need another
Love the
couple of
placeholder.
It's
weeks?
a placeholder. Can I ask you a question, though?
Sure.
Did we ever buy those breathing apparatuses?
Not yet. Soon.
We've been waiting for confirmation on whether or not we are going to receive, remember we applied
For a grant, and we're supposed to find that out.
We have not been denied yet.
Okay, why isn't
So-
that in here?
Actually, because
We're still gonna buy it.
this year's budget.
It's still in this year.
So we will have this discussion shortly.
Shortly, okay. Thank you, I didn't mean to get off the track, but I didn't want to lose that in my mind.
So did we make a decision?
I would take it out of 2014. Because I'm hearing that the car is in good condition. And the reason this is relevant is at some point, whether, and I'm starting to think it's not going to be tonight, we're going to have to talk about whether we're going to do a transfer of money from the unassigned reserves to the capital fund. When we make that decision, we're going to have some rationale as to why we're moving the amount of money we're going to move. In order to have that rationale, we're going to have some idea of what kind of projects we actually want to fund. So, this placeholder stuff, we shouldn't use that flippantly. I mean, what we're talking about here is we need to be looking at things that we actually think that we're seriously considering about doing in 2014. Yes, it's going to come back to us for a decision. But if we think that there's something here that we are not realistically going to entertain in 2014, it's in our interest to take it off now. Am I missing something?
no, you said it right.
Okay. So I would suggest that we take this one off because we think the car right now is in good condition. So next is the cardiac monitors.
Okay, so this is one cardiac monitor. Currently, the frontline ambulance is about 4 to 5 years old. I don't have the accurate date on how old this unit is. The newest unit that's available, the greatest bells and whistles, if you will, has a lot of new features on it, but this is tied to saving someone's life. So it has depth and rate compression for CPR ability. It has better 12-lead monitoring capabilities on the screen. It has better communications, Bluetooth technology. So again, with anything that's fairly current, this is a piece of equipment that affords the paramedics the latest ability to save somebody's life.
Now, you've had good luck in the past about getting grants for some of this kind of equipment. Any chance that you might be able to?
Well, the grant monies, as you know, that we're waiting for the SCBA grant, and then we applied for a software grant in 2011 when I came here, have both been, while the 2011 grant has been denied, so then 2012 we're still waiting, but we have potential for a grant, but unfortunately, our financial situation, according to FEMA grants, is not so dire as compared to other communities throughout the country. So,
Where did the old cardiac monitors go?
Actually, this one, I have the ability to trade this one in because it's still fairly new. So we're getting a potential $6,000 trade-in if we buy this monitor within the next year or so.
So does this reflect that $6,000?
It does not. Actually, I have a $29,000 proposal right now with the trade-in, so, but for purposes of the CIP, we left it at 40.
But let's put in what the actual,
Yeah,
let's reduce
so
the
it's
number.
it actually should be
30 grand.
But you said $6,000
$6,000.
trade-in? What
He
did
said
you
he
say
had-
is the trade-in?
The trade-in is around $6,000, but I have a current bid
At 29.
at $29,000.
So it should be 29.
Including the trade-in.
Including the trade-in, yes.
Okay, so it should be $29,000. Jessica?
For budgeting purposes, for accounting purposes, as well as auditing, fixed assets, et cetera, we need to actually budget the expenditure in its totality, and then
okay.
also the revenue that we anticipate to receive as a reimbursement or trading value, so to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that means you have to leave
That's why I hate finance, right? You went in this year and went right out this way.
Put a marker on it.
That doesn't make any sense to me. If we're trying to determine how much money we are going to need to spend in 2014, why are we inflating the price? If we know it's going to cost us $29,000, why do we have 40?
I'm saying from an accounting perspective.
I know, I understand from an accounting perspective, but in terms of, from a realistic perspective of how much we're going to be spending, how much are we going to be spending?
Well, when we actually do the budget, we'll have in it any anticipated trade-in value and/or revenues anticipated for the sale of a fixed asset, things of that sort. But the actual cost that we're going to be writing the check out for, usually in most circumstances, as it relates to the fixed asset, usually we're getting a check back or they're reducing the value. From the budgeting perspective, or as it relates to the auditors when they come in, we need to be reporting the actual full upfront cost, because the fixed asset that we're currently selling, we also have to do accounting adjustments. I'm trying to simplify it as much as I can for you.
Someone understands it, so we'll leave the 40,000.
expenditure is
I give up. I surrender. We'll leave the 40,000.
But for our brand,
Correct.
we can figure 30.
Yes, exactly, right.
I understand.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So now, don't go away, Jessica, I think you're up next here.
Do you want to go back to?
No. Not this one. No, we'll leave it. So, Jessica, I think you're up. And there are two items here that I would like you to address. One is the GIS scanner plotter, and also the unfunded one that's been here forever, which is the upgrade to the financial software. So if you could talk about both of those.
Sure. The GIS scanner / plotter would be utilized by both administration, Public Works, and also the building department. The scanning portion would be available for, the building department has an abundance of plans. We're starting to run out of space. And so then it begs the question, now do we have to start renting space to store some of these older plans? If we convert everything to files and scan things in as people are available to do scanning, then that eliminates that issue of space as it relates to scanning the plans for building department. With regard to the GIS, currently Public Works is limited in what they can print out, the scale, the information, things of that sort, similar to the manager's office. Most communities that have GIS, at a minimum, have a GIS plotter in which they can have printouts. We have neither a scanner nor a plotter.
And our agreement with the GIS company, they don't do the
No.
paperwork for us, they don't give us the plots?
No, not unless we ask them to, and then obviously
They
they'll
charge.
turn around and
If you
bill
want-
us whatever their cost is.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is not something that we would need in an emergency, right? This is a project we're working on and we need to plot something out or get a larger map, right?
Correct. It's not something that, for example, is an urgent need,
Right.
but obviously we see a need, especially as it relates to the building department with
Why-
regard to that
Isn't this the
information.
kind of thing that we might consider sharing with another community? It's not something that we're going to be using all the time. It's not something where, for the most part, we're going to say, oh my gosh, I need this in 30 seconds, or the building is going to collapse on us. Isn't this the kind of thing where we might be looking for somebody else in the consortium to share the cost?
Printer, yes. Scanner, no. Because if we're going to be using in-house staff, we can't be having our staff during their downtime because we need coverage, obviously, at the village hall. So if it was located here during certain downtime, they could obviously work on it as they become available. If it's at another village hall, we can't have the expectation of sending over our plans to be scanned and then them sending us back the file.
So the point of the,
I think this
What was
could
it?
also reduce the paper. You know, when you build in the village, you have to submit 3 sets of plans. If you came to the window and said, scan these, then you don't have to submit 3 sets of plans for the homeowner. You know, it's easing the burden on the person applying for the building license, I guess, as well.
That too.
And then to Jean's point, as far as they are used in an emergency standpoint to identify, you know, gas lines, electrical situations, underground vaults. So having access to it on a 24-hour basis would be great for printing out all different kinds of maps in an emergency standpoint.
did you have something?
Nope.
to add?
Trustee Foley hit it right.
I'm not willing to decide on that right now, just for the record. Right?
So in terms of but part of what you're talking about is digitizing the archive of materials we have, right? Is it, and aren't there plenty of places that you can outsource that to who will actually do that for us?
There is for a significant cost. I mean, you're talking about very large plans, and so obviously they'll charge you per page. And if there are certain if there's material that obviously is delicate or sensitive in material, I don't know that necessarily we would feel comfortable outsourcing certain items to. Obviously, that would be more of a question for the building department as to which documents they would feel comfortable sending out versus having to do in-house if possible. But I think obviously there would be an upfront cost, but if we were to utilize a service, and despite trying to utilize staff in-house, I think there could be a cost savings.
Our bidding way more effective to be able to have the ability
All
to
right, you
print out.
convinced me.
In the sense of talking of a water main issue, we can print out the section of the main, and they can look
Yes.
at it, so.
John?
Maybe you said that and I missed it, but will this scanner be able to convert a paper document into a GIS compatible file? Or does it just scan it into a PDF type of?
That I'm not sure. Actually, I have a scheduled appointment with Peter, Ed, and our GIS consortium. They actually recommended this dollar amount, and they said other communities have actually utilized this GIS plotter/scanner, and so we were going to go forth with our 5-year plan, incorporating it as part of something,
Yeah,
but
I
that would be a
believe it-
question for
I
them.
believe it does
It
take,
does.
and it converts it to a file that can be used in the GIS.
And can be sent to the field,
Correct.
to a.
So like an AutoCAD file or something like that?
Right,
Exactly.
and you can pull it up on an iPad.
I mean, I think we've spent all this money on the software, yet we have no way to input and print things out. So how, I mean,
So what do we do now?
I'm convinced.
For
What do we
some
do
of,
now?
for some of the larger plats or scans, we have utilized one of the communities who have an existing plotter, but the turnaround time has been longer than I think is appropriate. And also, I think, as Trustee Foley says, it will provide us much more capability to provide maps to individuals who have come in and requesting them.
I would add the future, the present of office technologies. Everything should be digital. Everything.
Right, and
Building plans.
to be honest, if we have this plotter, since we are working at great strides to build our GIS platform and layers, and eventually not only having that capability where the Public Works Department or fire or even police will have the ability to pull this stuff up on an iPad, we could create smaller version books that are more condensed than those larger maps that we can then keep on file as well. So you have kind of a redundant system in place.
Okay. So you feel like talking about the unfunded upgrade?
The financial software has been an unfunded status for many, many years. We're currently we had an update, I believe it was back in 2004 or 2005 from the good old DAWS blue screen. So it's a little bit more Windows-based looking. It's not a web-based. Currently, our software provider will support the version we're on. There will be a point that we'll need to decide whether or not we upgrade the version we're on or we just bid out for a financial software overall. We utilize the financial software for utility billing, HR payroll, business license, pretty much everything under the sun, cash receipts, accounts payable. The financial software isn't something that's always very attractive, but it's very costly. And obviously we need it to run village operations. It's not like, the fire truck or a squad car, but the village utilizes it on a daily basis. To function with budgeting, we need it. I mean, to do pretty much a function as a village, we need good financial software. A couple of residents most recently with the vehicle stickers, we utilize the state of Illinois for doing online payments. And we had a couple of residents that didn't like the search functions that the state of Illinois had established as parameters. And I said, well, unfortunately, we're limited in what we can put out there because we have older software, and so our software isn't web-based, so a resident can't gain access to their billing file or what have you to actually make an online payment through our system. So we have to use the state of Illinois to gain access to do online payments. And it's something that we've tried to enhance over time, but once again, I mean, we're limited in our structure. So, and also there's been residents that have asked to gain information just logging into their account online, similar to their credit card or their banking account. Villages are offering that particular service. We don't have that. We're not there yet because obviously we have the older software. A resident can check their utility bill balance by going to the Illinois Fund site and putting in their utility bill account number, but once again, we're limited in the scope of it being updated because there's not a direct interface. So if a person makes a payment and it's been posted to our billing, but we haven't updated the file yet because usually we do it on a weekly basis, then there is that lag of information.
Jessica, those are enhancements that would be of interest and helpful to our residents, but could you speak for a minute about what our current system lacks that is making your job more difficult, or what are some bells and whistles that you see elsewhere that you would like to have in a new system?
Just the financial reporting. I'm limited in the report writer that is provided just because of the older software. We figure out workarounds, but that's a huge issue.
Manual work because of that?
Yes. One complaint that we've had is the financial software. If a resident tries to overpay on their utility bill or already has a credit balance, it causes issues within the accounting system. If a resident will actually call and request specifically, can I carry a credit because I'm going to be out of town, we will actually track their account to make sure that the system doesn't start doing strange things with their account. But if we see a credit already on their account, we actually send the payment back because if they haven't requested it, we don't want them to overpay on their account and there be issues down the line. And so those are some of the hang-ups with regard to the financial software. In a perfect world, would we love to upgrade to the web-based and the new greatest thing that they have out there? Absolutely. But obviously, there are certain constraints as it relates to budgeting. And so we're realistic, and as a staff, we try to figure out how we can accommodate residents, still providing them the service level, but also working within the means of the financial software.
And that's really why I wanted to have this discussion. This is one of those unfunded things that has been being passed along for quite a while now, that I think we need to seriously think about moving away from the unfunded and actually tackling
I
this.
actually find this to be more important. Personally, I would like to see this upgraded even before the scanning and the plotter. I think this is something that has to do with the efficiency of our government. I understand that what we're talking about too, but this has been going on for 10 years now with all these workarounds and with, a small staff trying to provide an increased amount of information required by trustees as well as by residents.
And unfortunately, this is an old number. The former finance director, Kevin Wachtel, when he was here, spoke with Encode about an upgrade when he first started. So we're talking about essentially 6 years ago that this number was formulated based on upgrades at that time. There were a couple of upgrades after he started to the software with regard to vehicle stickers and being able to post files online so people could pay for their vehicle stickers online. So there have been certain enhancements, but this is a very rough number.
So can you get us an accurate number?
Yes, and it's more or less where the board is at. Do we do a competitive bid for financial software, which if we completely upgrade the software to a different one, we could be talking about $500,000. If we're looking at the existing and saying we're going to utilize Encode, which is our current financial software provider, and we're going to just upgrade, we're not going to do a competitive bid, we're just going to upgrade our current software to whatever version they're on so that we can remain supported. Those would be the two different numbers that we'd be grappling with.
And would the latter be web-based?
For Encode, yes. They are on web-based format now.
And this is a company that you have found to be good, serviceable, and,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Every time we've reached out to them for our support, they're very attentive with getting back to us relatively quickly as well. So.
One thing you just said that confused me. If you upgrade, then it's supported. But is the conversion that we're on currently supported?
At the moment, yes.
Do you have any idea?
They could come, we currently are under a year-long service contract that we just paid for. So for the next year, we know that we'll be supported. Usually, obviously, they'll provide advance notice saying if you don't upgrade to the most recent, to at least at a minimum this version, you're no longer going to be supported. We haven't received that letter yet, so I think we're fine for a bit, but
Okay.
My experience has been that even the rollout of an upgrade takes some significant time to work out all of the issues that come up. I'm not going to use the word glitch, but the issues that come up. So even, it isn't as if you could upgrade and then tomorrow everything's fixed.
with another community, I've been part of both a software upgrade and a complete a new software install. Software upgrade is easier, but you're still going to deal with glitches within the system with the upgrade. Completely new software, sometimes implementation can straddle 3 years because you're implementing it in spurts. Because first of all, you're limited in your staffing. You've got to obviously accommodate whatever the new chart of accounts, for example, in the new financial software is, updating based on what their components are that maybe your old software that you had didn't have. And so there are certain things that you need to essentially marry together when you're doing a completely different software. So an upgrade to the existing software would probably be a little bit more seamless, a little bit more easier on staff as it relates to that.
What I would suggest, since it sounds like we are supported for the next year, and now that you know this board is actually interested in actually moving forward on this, why don't you get us the alternatives?
Sure.
So that we can look at that for 2015.
Absolutely.
I would also ask that we at least look at a software program that's expandable or includes other municipal software, such as building permits, service requests? those
Our
types of
current
things?
software actually does provide that. Those would just be add-ons.
I don't know if it's worth it to spend more money for those programs, but we should
Right.
at least look at it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Jessica.
Sure.
I would suggest that we stop. I think that we have muddied the waters enough for one night, and that we come back afresh at our next meeting to tackle the really big questions, which in terms of the fund transfers and the discussion of a possible bond referendum. What do you think? Yes?
That's fine.
Okay. We do not have a need for an executive session tonight, so, and there is no new business, so I would ask for a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Sussman, second by Mr. Pollack. Please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman. Aye. Trustee Pollak.
Aye.
Trustee Hamilton. Aye. Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.